We're live on YouTube, and it is time for our Week 2 NFL preview. Sam, how you doing, man?
Doing well, Steven. How about you?
Doing great. Week 2 is upon us. We're going to go game by game, of course. But first, don't forget, yesterday had a great show.
Yep.
A lot of people like to listen to our Monday and our Thursday show. Don't forget the Wednesday show. Jay Gruden, all sorts of outstanding analysis on some of the year 2 quarterbacks. Had Dean Blandino. Had a good Marvin Harrison Jr. discussion. So be sure to check out that Wednesday show. And if you're not in the Discord yet, we're going to be making picks here today, game by game, and you could play along with those picks as well.
Yeah, last season we were just having the people in the Discord kind of make their picks and choosing the most interesting games. This year we actually have a league, a pick'em league, and a survivor pool league using the Sleeper app, which you can find in the Discord. The link to the Discord should be in the description of the show. You can also find it in the link tree on my Twitter profile at Sam Monson NFL. I need to give a shout out to the guy that's leading the league after 1 week. Somebody called Poncho Pets is the only person in week 1 who had 13 wins. There were another 11 people tied with 12 wins, but this is the one guy in the league that had 13 in week 1.
13 wins?
Yeah.
Harry's at 9.
Yes.
People are keeping track of that because he's in the league,
which is the best of the three of us.
And for the bet, I wanted to have a tracker because somebody was predicting it was Harry's winning percentage against Bo Nix's grade.
Yes, PFF grade. And it's like 56-43 right now, Harry's winning. Yeah. Harry's winning so far in the picks versus Bo Nix PFF grade. So there's a lot to keep track of here. Yeah. You and Harry, I think, are both, your names in the thing are fairly obvious. Mine is less obvious, but in the chat of the
Why
Sleeper.
didn't you use your name?
Because there's when you have to pick a username, the username I pick is always available.
Sam Monson?
No, that's not always available, right? 16-year-old girls from Minnesota sometimes have Sam Monson as their username and squat on it, right? The one I used is always available. So when in doubt, I use that as my username because I know I'm not going to have to put in 7 usernames to find one that's available. That's always available.
All right,
so
good.
It's in there.
Happy.
Point is, in the chat, you'll find me as well.
All right, man. So go check out the Discord, and as you log in here, hit the subscribe button over on YouTube. Closing in on 10,000 followers. Just not even a month into this thing. Appreciate all the support, and we're just, spread the word, continuing to grow here.
Yep.
Ready to go?
Let's go.
All right, we're going game by game. That's what we do. Thursday night football, Buffalo Bills at the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins favored by 2.5 here, over under a 48.5. Thank you to FanDuel for their lines. They sent them to us directly.
Oh, straight to you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Directly to us.
Cool.
So shout out to FanDuel for all of our lines here today. Bills Dolphins tonight. Al Michaels back on the call. Amazon Prime. Ready to go?
This must be one of the best games Al's had on Thursday Night Football. This is an
no more
outstanding
this Broncos Colts with Russ and old Matt Ryan at the helm.
Outstanding anymore. Thursday night game relative to what normally gets put out there. Buffalo, Miami also potentially undoes some of the early season in Miami weather advantage that they get against Buffalo. Late in the evening. It's Miami. It's early September.
But the sun, you lose the sun advantage.
Right.
That's legit.
It's probably still pretty hot in the evening. But the big thing from this is Miami's injury report, all the running backs. Yep. And you look at it, you say, oh, that's terrible. They're missing their top 2 backs. Leaves them with only, quote unquote, Jeff Wilson and rookie Jalen Wright, who was a lot of people's RB1 in this draft. Yeah. It's like, even missing your top 2 running backs, they're still unusually well stocked at that position. And of course, they still have all their receivers, et cetera, et cetera. So Miami, on the one hand, has been dealt a significant blow injury-wise. On the other hand, it's like they still look like they're really good there.
Yeah. If you remember in last year's game, the last couple of years, really, Buffalo's done a nice job against the Dolphins and Tua. I'm with you on the backs, though. I mean, Jalen Wright's the guy for me to keep an eye on because of that big playability. I want to see how much Miami continues to rely on the run because when they played last year, remember in that first matchup, Miami was hot. They was in that first 5-week stretch where they set the record for most passing yards, and they're moving it down the field. In the second half, Buffalo really shut them down and went back and looked at Tua's stats against Buffalo over the last couple of years. We're talking 2 touchdowns, 3 picks, passer rating of 79.5. His PFF grade is just 67.4 as a passer. We're talking about Tua, he's a high, 62.8 passing grade. And Tua's usually, he's been in the high 80s over the last couple of years. So Tua's struggled. Buffalo's done a really good job. The one other thing that when you break down what Buffalo has done against Miami, I remember talking about it last year, how good of a job they did taking away the middle of the field. And Baltimore did something similar. So this is one of the first tests where Tua and the Dolphins and Mike McDaniel going up against a good team. And we know how much Miami loves that quick hitter over the middle of the field to Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, whoever it may be. Tua's passing grade last year, in between the numbers, 91 PFF passing grade. It drops to 67 against Buffalo. So all the numbers against this Buffalo defense, way below standard. And this is one of those stories of the Dolphins, right? Was all last year, they beat up on the Giants and the Commanders and whoever else, all the bad teams. When they faced the good teams, did they sneak some wins in? Yeah, they snuck some wins, but it wasn't the same. And they were not as good against the better teams. They're better against Buffalo at home, for sure. But we would always go back and say, yeah, it was 100 degrees, and it was in September, and the sun's on them, and the whole thing. But here's the deal. This is the types of games Miami has to win. And when you're paying Tua over $53 million a year, the types of games that you're paying him to win. So storyline-wise, we're getting it early. Bills, Dolphins, and the Dolphins have, first big major obstacle in this. Hey, how do you get over the hump and become one of the best teams in the AFC?
Weather apparently is scheduled to still be 89 degrees at 8 p.m.
That's fine.
And rainy, though. Light rain.
Oh, boy. It's always raining in Florida.
Yeah, but that's a potential literal dampener on all that Miami speed. I mean, one way of negating speed is to make the surface slippy and the ball slippy and...
Slippy?
Slippy.
Slippery?
Slippy.
Slippy.
Slippy. It's a word.
Make the surface slippy.
Yeah.
I'm looking for one-liners that show up that we could put on T-shirts. We've told the brass, we've told management we need swag. Yeah. And they're at least talking about it.
Okay.
So
Slippy's probably not it.
Probably doesn't make it, but I'm just keeping my ear open for some sort of phrase that ends up on a T-shirt here.
Got it.
So yeah, I'm just watching this Miami Dolphins, the Miami offense against this Bills defense, because the Bills defense has done a good job slowing down Tua and what Miami likes to do, attacking the middle of the field.
Agreed.
This is where I finish my thought, and then you, as my co-host, chimes in with some other thoughts.
My thought was the weather and Slippy, and you rejected that. It's gone. So
okay.
Now you got to carry this by yourself.
Yeah, we'll just redo that. Let me circle back. Yeah, I mean, it could be slippy out there, and if it's slippy, that's probably in Buffalo's favor because they're not as fast. Yeah. And so if Miami's speed is a little too slippy, then good for the Bills' corners.
Exactly.
Yeah, got that.
That's why I like Buffalo in this game.
You think Al's going to talk about how slippy it is out there tonight?
Al's definitely a guy that would use slippy.
You think so?
Yeah.
Yeah. Who do you think Al has in this game? Do you think he's all over Buffalo as the 2.5-point underdog?
Yeah, I do. Al's a sharp.
How much of this?
Mind.
I mean, how much of this line is the Bills kind of? We don't know how good or bad Arizona is, but the Bills snuck by Arizona last week, got a little close.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few lines this week that are hedging. They're sort of they're the man in Vegas not quite understanding how much of this was Team X and how much of it was opponent Y in week 1, and after week 2 you'll get a better idea now that they go up against a real test in one direction or the other. So I think there's quite a few lines that are sort of not quite sure what we're dealing with.
There's a shirt request in the chat that I will. Yeah. That's not going to become a shirt now.
Okay. What is it?
When I said we don't just hand work out around here.
That would be good. That would be a funny shirt.
Yeah.
We don't Steve Palazzolo with your face on it.
Put a quote.
Yeah.
Just put a quote around it.
With your cartoon face.
Yeah.
That's perfect. That's an ideal T-shirt.
Matchup to watch tonight on Amazon Prime. Greg Rousseau and Austin Jackson. Remember Austin Jackson? Yeah, coming into his own for the Dolphins. He was kind of awful early in his career. He's gotten better. They paid him. He's one of those offensive linemen who gets better as he's gotten into years 4 and 5 here. And Rousseau's coming off that 3-sack game against Arizona where it looks like he's got a chance to get it up into that superstar tier of elite pass rushers. So that's a matchup to watch.
That was one of the best games of Austin Jackson's career, and that's even with that one play in there where Trayvon Walker absolutely wrecked him, ran over him, ran through him, then jumped over him. In fact, that was the one negative play, basically, that he had in that game.
But mushing people in the run game.
Yeah, outside of that, number one, he absolutely locked down that side of the line outside of that one play, and that was the majority of those of the game, right? It was 40, almost 50 pass blocking snaps, of which one was bad. And then, as you said, in the run game, he was moving people. Like, in a way, I did not think that Austin Jackson had that in his skill set repertoire to be able to just absolutely destroy people on contact in the run game. But, okay, there was only 20-odd run blocking snaps, but, man, that was impressive.
Yeah, they ran power behind him, zone. I mean, he did a really nice job. So keep an eye on that matchup at right tackle. Let's make a pick here. And again, you guys can make the picks along with us through the Discord. Sleeper app is where we're all doing it. Miami by 2.5 here on Thursday Night Football.
Buffalo.
Yeah, I'm also taking Buffalo. They played a good game.
I can't help but notice that Harry's picks are not in yet.
Do we usually have his Oh, yeah, we do usually have his picks before the show.
This is how he steals an advantage. He gets to wait late on.
Yeah, he watches the show, gets our analysis.
Gets the injury report on
Thursday. You're right. I screwed up. I was reporting on Harry's picks last week, and now the listeners don't know. So you're going to have to sign up.
You have to be in the Discord.
So you have to be in the Discord. So maybe that was my marketing ploy.
And the Sleeper app, yeah.
You got to be
in the league.
You got to be with us.
See Harry's pick.
I feel like Harry would take Buffalo here. I'll predict what Harry's pick will be. I feel like he would take Buffalo. He takes whoever the better team is in his brain.
Okay.
So anyway, let's go. So here's what we're going to do order-wise. We're not going to go chronologically. We're going to go with the biggest games.
Okay.
In order here. So one of the other biggest games, Cincinnati Bengals at the Kansas City Chiefs. It's Sunday afternoon, 4:25. Chiefs favored by 5.5 here. Can't help but think this line would have been closer to 3 just a week ago until people saw the Bengals play football.
Yeah.
And they're coming off their loss against the New England Patriots. Injury-wise, we're looking at Amarius Mims, the rookie tackle, potentially returning. I don't even know if he would necessarily start over Trent Brown, but he could be there as a swing tackle or backup or sixth offensive lineman. I think more importantly, though, you get T. Higgins. He got injured at practice, a couple weeks ago and might not be there for this week. And it feels like if the Bengals are going to pull this upset, they might need the whole crew or Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow to get back to being special again.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like they need some kind of secondary threat outside of Jamar Chase. Usually that's T. Higgins, right? And T. Higgins is obviously their second best receiver right now. So either they need somebody else to emerge, whether it's Iosivas, whether it's Charlie Jones, your guy Jermaine Burton, maybe he could get a snap or two. They just need something else.
Iosivas does not look like the guy. Like, I don't think you want him as a 2.
Well, despite an entire offseason, he was the guy. He was this year's, Troy Williamson had his eyes fixed and he's going to break out. Like, Iosivas was apparently spending his entire life working out with some wide receiver specialist, him and Chase Brown. And this was it. Iosivas is going to take a giant step forward. He's going to have developed with a pace unknown to mankind over the offseason. Now he's going to be the dude. And you hit week 1, it's like, no, he just looks the same. It's pretty much the same as last year. So
yeah, and he could be a good 3. I mean, he could be a fine 3.
And he might still develop. It's just there was no evidence of it week 1.
I wonder, look, at draft night, I sat in this seat for a different employer at the time. But I sat right here and I said, the Jermaine Burton pick is the most important pick of the draft because of games like this.
Because you had no faith in Princeton.
No, because I had that much faith in Jermaine Burton. Now, I understood the off-field stuff and I didn't have any idea about his playbook, knowledge or running the right routes or whatever it is. My curiosity here is how desperate is Cincinnati after week 1? And how do you sort through Cincinnati seemingly being unprepared for the season in weeks 1 and 2 every single year, always basically starting 0-2? And by the way, that's like unbelievable for the Chiefs that you get Cincinnati early in the year for whatever reason.
Yeah.
The flow of their season is if they like Jake Browning's Bengals last year gave the Chiefs a game later in the year. Joe Burrow's Week 2 Bengals might get blown out here. So Cincinnati's got to take some chances here. Throw Jermaine Burton out there and say, hey, go win deep a couple times.
That's what's interesting to me is that Cincinnati has probably been the best team in the NFL at going against the Chiefs during the Patrick Mahomes era. You know, they've got a very good record against them, and they've been very close in the games where they haven't won. So arguably this is the best team in football at combating Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, but they usually face them much later in the year when they are playing their best football, as opposed to right up front when they have started slowly almost every single season and haven't looked like themselves. So does the motivating factor of facing Kansas City shorten the time span that it normally takes Cincinnati to get themselves together and snap into it? Or is this just a time, like it's just a perfect time for Kansas City to be playing them because you're not getting the real version of the Bengals, you're getting the early season version, which simply isn't as good? Like, are they able to snap into it immediately because all of a sudden it's real, it's Kansas City, it's not, you know, whoever the hell we're playing in week 2 that we don't really care about? That to me is the interesting thing about this game. Like, can they actually control this early season slump and snap out of it immediately when you're facing the best team in the NFL?
The story when the Bengals, as you mentioned, played Kansas City well, certainly relative to the rest of the league, going all the way back to the 2021 AFC Championship when the Bengals upset the Chiefs in Kansas City. The whole thing was Lou Anarumo, defensive coordinator, makes second half adjustments. Mahomes did nothing in the second half, including turning the ball over several times or twice. And they kept going with this three-man rush, and that was kind of the story, the three-man rush against Mahomes. And there was, in 2021 and 22, when the Bengals and Chiefs played each other, three-man rush against Mahomes. Mahomes was 11 for 24 passing. And, you know, the Bengals did a nice job disguising and getting into it. And, you know, last year it didn't work as much. Mahomes was 3 for 3, including a touchdown, 48 yards. So it's not as simple as I just rushed 3 against Mahomes. But Cincinnati needs to go back to Lou Anarumo's being able to create just enough indecision in this Kansas City offense that it gives Cincinnati a chance. And this is where I think the Bengals have a better shot this year versus, say, last year. They've got Von Bell back. They've got the veterans in the secondary to maybe do more of the disguise, do more of, hey, here's what we're reading in the first half. Let's make those second half adjustments. I think they have an opportunity to do that better against Mahomes. My concern is, first off, on the Bengals defense, one of the worst tackling teams in the NFL last week, and you're going up against a team that has all sorts of dudes who know how to break tackles, either from a shiftiness standpoint or a power standpoint, and then this Kansas City offense, and as it, you know, they're way more explosive than they were the last couple of years as well.
Yeah, they, again, part of how they've been good against the Chiefs is they have excelled at that the style of defense that you have to play effectively against Kansas City, right? Rushing 3, not sending the blitz, not even rushing your full complement, dropping 8 into coverage, and being patient. One question this year is, does that work as effectively now that Kansas City has added some speed to that team? Guys like Xavier Worthy. Cam Taylor-Britt is already out there. A little bit of trash talk. You know, is asked what Xavier Worthy brings to the table. It's like speed. He can run fast in a straight line, but doesn't do a whole lot else good because he's only 100 and something pounds. You get some hands on him and you take him away. So
this is just like PSA to the rest of the league. Just stop talking when you're playing the Chiefs. They're at this level. Remember the who's the Anthony Smith, the Steelers safety? The Patriots undefeated season in 2007.
Yeah.
And he was over there talking smack, and you're like, who's Anthony Smith? And the Patriots were good enough that year to specifically target him and make him look bad in a football game. That's how good they were. They were like, we're going to run specific plays with Tom Brady and Randy Moss and make you, Anthony Smith, look bad because you said some stuff earlier in the week. Like, the Chiefs are that good. They're that good. Where they can design a play this week or multiple plays where Xavier Worthy's lined up one-on-one on Cam Taylor-Britt and makes him look bad. And they could just go redo the game plan on a Thursday and put those plays in. Like, just stop talking. Just stop talking against the Chiefs. Stop using Mahomes dummies. Stop doing it. Just go play. It's not going to help because the Chiefs are that good that they can go and just make you look bad.
Okay.
That's what I think.
Fair enough.
I was just responding
I
to
say
you.
let him go.
Oh, you say let it go.
Let him go. Let him wind him up. Let him talk all the smack you want. Just go out there and cover Xavier Worthy.
All right, go get him. I mean, Cam Taylor-Britt's physical enough maybe to mess with him a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what makes Andy Reid and the Chiefs so good, is they don't just throw Xavier Worthy out there at X and say, hey, go run deep. They move him around, put him inside in the slot. They're going to give him space to run. And they're going to find, like, every single week you have to account for Xavier Worthy. We saw that in week 1.
Oh, look, there's a clip. Cam Taylor-Britt has effectively anticipated your criticism and responded preemptively. So, quote, I don't like them, the Chiefs. I don't shut up. I don't shut up, end quote. So, to you,
I don't
Stephen
shut up.
Palazzolo,
Where's that from?
Cam Taylor-Britt says, I don't shut up. He's going to talk his talk. He doesn't like the Chiefs, and he's not afraid to put it out there.
I mean, go get him, man. Go get him. Anything else about this game? So my question here from a Bengals perspective, I've given Zach Taylor a ton of credit through the years for when they lay an egg, when they have a dud, they bounce back from it. I probably said this on the first 4 weeks of shows last year. And it took them 4 or 5 weeks, right? But there was the excuse, right? Burrow's calf and rust and all this. Do they bounce back now? Or is it still like the slow burn where the Bengals by week 8 or 9 look like they should, but up until that point, it's like, are they losing it? Is Burrow overrated? They need Burrow and Jamar Chase to be special in this game, special throwing the ball down the field, not underneath. They need those dudes making big-time plays to keep up with this Chiefs offense. All that said, Chiefs by 5.5. Where are you going?
I am buying into Kansas City based off early season Cincinnati.
I am too. I'll take the Chiefs to cover it. Interesting scheduling for Kansas City, too, facing 2 of their presumed biggest contenders in the AFC. Baltimore in week 1, Cincinnati in week 2, both games at home. But Kansas City, if they come out of this 2-0, they'll only have 6 home games left. Actually, I didn't count. So, you can't do that anymore because it's a 17-game schedule, and I don't know off the top of my head how many they're going to have. Mm-hmm. But they'll have 2 of their home games out of the way, we'll say, but sitting there 2-0 with 2 of their competitors already out of the way.
I mean, just getting out of 2 games against Baltimore and Cincinnati 2-0 is a big win.
It's huge, absolutely. So I'll take the Chiefs to cover the 5.5. I'm going to guess Harry would also take the Chiefs. I don't think he's picked against the Chiefs ever in his life, which is pretty smart. Another awesome game this week: Tampa Bay Bucks at the Detroit Lions. It's awesome. However, Detroit favored by 7.5 right now per FanDuel.
Big line.
Yeah. So again, it's one of those. Tampa Bay was very impressive last week. They did it against Washington. There's a chance Washington's awful defensively, so you're trying to weigh that.
Pretty big chance.
And then for the last 10-plus years that you and I have worked together, what I say in week 2 is we don't want to overreact to week 1, and the home-away thing, week 1 to 2, is a big thing, right? And so Tampa Bay being at home in week 1 helps. Now they're going on the road. Detroit gets their second home game, and Detroit, they won by 6 in overtime against the Rams, but I don't know, is 7.5 too much against a Bucs team that looked really good last week?
So it could be. Here's the thing, right? This is the game. This is the game that if Baker shows up,
here we go.
And we get a big boy performance from Baker Mayfield, I'm back on the bandwagon.
How about that? I'm back.
And the reason is, I think Tampa Bay secondary is going to struggle containing the Lions. I think that offense is going to have success. The Bucs are banged up on defense. I don't know that they're going to have the best defense in the world anyway. I think the Lions are absolutely going to have success on offense. So this is going to be a shootout, and Baker Mayfield is going to need to keep pace with the Detroit Lions, with Jared Goff, with Ben Johnson and everything they can bring to the table, Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's going to have to be Baker Mayfield showing up and having the kind of game that he had week 1, putting the ball on his receivers, letting those guys make plays, and shouldering the load. And he's got to do it on the road in a tough environment, in a noisy stadium, a noisy dome, and do that. If he's able to do that off the back of a good performance, I'm back in. I'm buying back into Baker if that's possible. I think that's a very difficult assignment, and the volatility of Baker Mayfield's career up until this point would say there's a very healthy chance that he doesn't. So it's all on him.
You'll be back with Baker then.
If we get that kind of performance.
That'd be impressive. That would be impressive. The Bucs injuries concern me. secondary in particular. 3 of their first top 4 outside corners, Antoine Winfield, all banged up or missing this game. So that's definitely going to be an issue. Even offensively, Luke Gedeke, the starting right tackle, is in concussion protocol. So we're recording this on a Thursday. I think if he was going to clear concussion protocol, we might not know till Friday. Right? When they travel. Or do I travel Friday or Saturday? But we'll know by Friday probably. And so if he's out, I mean, even if he's there, you got Aiden Hutchinson there. Hutchinson coming off a monster game on Sunday Night Football. The rest of the Lions' pass rush was outstanding, and that was one of our offseason questions. Now, again, was that because the Rams were playing second and third stringers up and down the offensive line? Maybe. But the Lions definitely have more depth on that defensive line now than they did last year and the last couple years, and that showed in week 1. So I think the Lions have a chance to do some damage up front against the Bucs, pretty much anywhere on that line other than Tristan Wirfs. They could do damage up front, and it's going to be real tough for the Bucs in their secondary. And then you get Todd Bowles still blitzing like crazy, still 40-50% blitz rate, and that boom or bust nature against Goff, all the space that Ben Johnson creates in that offense for the Lions. As I talk through it, it feels like it could be one of those Lions blowouts.
That's what I'm saying. It's like it's a very difficult assignment for Baker.
Who'd you pick? But you're picking Tampa Bay, according to the doc. You're reconsidering. I don't want to give away your pick here, but
it's a big line.
It is a big line.
It's a tough assignment, and if Baker achieves it, I'm back on the bandwagon. But it is a big line. Like Tampa Bay's offense should be good. They're banged up on both sides of the ball, and that's making it more difficult. But that offense looked really good week 1. Those players are the important players in terms of receivers are healthy. They've got talent in the backfield. I do think that they can keep pace in a shootout.
Yeah, it's just interesting to me because this line suggests that the man in Vegas suggests that Detroit is still a powerhouse despite having to go to overtime, having to go down to the wire against the Rams, despite the Rams being depleted on their offensive line. But then you saw the Lions impose their will in overtime. And look, I think if Jared Goff, I mentioned the other day, started turning the ball over or trying to turn the ball over a couple times as well. If he gets back to playing a little bit cleaner, the Lions should be fine here.
Yeah. Alternatively, Goff's ability to randomly heave those interceptions is what can keep the game close.
Jameson Williams watch to me, having 5 catches, 120 plus yards, had that big carry as well. Is this a weekly thing where they're getting Jameson Williams involved? It doesn't matter if they are. To me, it doesn't matter if he puts up the stats. He's already now become a threat that you need to keep an eye on. And the same way we're talking about Xavier Worthy as a guy that's going to, run the defense deep and stretch the field and open things up for the underneath Kansas City passing attack. Does that help co-worker Amon-Ra St. Brown have more opportunities now? Like defenses are going to have to start keeping eyes on Jameson Williams more and more. And so Sam Laporta, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, the run game, the underneath passing attack has just way more opportunities now just because I think of a week 1 dominant performance by Jameson Williams.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, his speed is – anybody that is successful as a genuine speedster changes the dynamic on defense every snap. I mean, that was the argument that people were making about Xavier Worthy in week 1. We were saying, hey, let's not get too carried away. His 2 scores were the run play that was incredibly well blocked and a busted coverage. And the pushback on that was, but look at where he opens up things, across the defense because of that speed. And it's legit. Like those guys change how defenses play the entire offense. You have to adjust for a guy that can just run past your corner in any given moment.
One other factor here, the Bucs traded Carlton Davis to the Lions this offseason for a 3rd-round pick. Carlton Davis fills a major need for the Lions. Again, their secondary overall looked pretty good in week 1 with Carlton Davis and the rookies back there, the youngsters. Carlton Davis apparently was given the lowdown on all the Bucs receivers this week and did a nice job. Just another, not revenge game necessarily, but get that crossover. Carlton Davis was just with the Bucs in the Dome, losing in the playoffs just a few months ago, and now it looks like Detroit's secondary is in much better shape, and the Bucs secondary in shambles with some of their injuries and everything. So, again, that's why I think I'm just leaning Lions here with injuries, and I just think they're in this powerhouse stage where they can lay it on the Bucs here this week.
Yep, it's entirely possible. I mean, that's what Vegas certainly thinks with that
7.5.
Yeah, it's just such a big line to me that I'm going to lean on Tampa Bay side.
Yeah, I mean, there was a point where I was looking at Tampa, thinking they could keep it close, and they were very competitive in the playoff game last year. But give me the Lions to cover this in the Dome here. And the Lions, again, they have this opportunity to come out of 2 straight weeks at home. You don't get too many teams that play at home to start the season. So the Lions having 2 of their home games, they want to come out of that 2-0 and not waste that start here. But I'm expecting the Lions to cover the 7.5 here. All right, this is a fun one. Sunday Night Football. Chicago Bears at the Houston Texans. Texans favored by 6.5. Feels like this line would have been closer if Caleb Williams wasn't so off on Sunday. And so we sat here, we broke down his performance, talked about did he miss throws because he was pressing, nervous? Are we trying to project a little bit, or is he just off? What do you expect in this game, Bears and Texans?
Well, this is one, where the line suggests that it suggested they actually watched the Bears game rather than just took the result and was like, okay, Chicago is a playoff team. They are really good. The Bears were the worst team for the majority of that game against Tennessee. And then the blocked punt really started to swing things back in their direction. And then obviously Will Levis kind of sealed it and gifted them the game back. They didn't look great in week 1. And a big part of that was Caleb Williams not looking great. And it felt like he was just playing too over the top, like playing, completely wired off his brain. It looked like he'd been caffeinated to the moon and just couldn't get himself under control in that game.
Me on draft night.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, can he calm down? Did he just need one of those games to get done and now we can actually settle down and, again, play just a little bit calmer and more in control? Or is that who he's going to be for a while at least? If that's who he's going to be for a while, it might be some tough sledding for the Bears because, he's extremely erratic back there. He's trying to make a play constantly. He's going to create a lot of negative plays trying to do that. And he'll create some magic every now and again, but the net right now is not good. And that was against a Tennessee defense that I think will be pretty good, but probably isn't any better than the one Houston is about to deploy. So, it really does come down to Williams for the Bears. Like, did he just need a game to get the jitters out of him? Or is this going to be a theme for his rookie season where, they need to work long-term on calming him down and getting him more structured and more collected in the pocket?
Yeah, and if you look at the supporting cast, a lot of times it's like, well, the guy had bad pass blocking. Or,
right.
They ran the ball all right early on. Pass protection was pretty good. There was definitely some plays where it broke down. There were some plays early, and I wonder how much that affected him. The early plays are when the Bears' pass protection was awful. They had guards and centers just getting collapsed by the monsters of Tennessee. And then they settled down after that. But that's where I was projecting this a little bit, where it felt like it started slow, and then Caleb tried to do a little bit too much. Because I thought the Bears did a decent job of at least giving him underneath routes, giving him the easy stuff, and he was missing them. He was just missing them. And it'd be okay if he missed a few, if he was making up for those with those special Caleb Williams plays. And we just didn't see enough of those on Sunday. So I can't wait to see how he bounces back. I do think, to your point, though, tough environment. I think it'll be bumping in Houston here. Tough environment with the pass rushers that they have, with Danielle Hunter, with Will Anderson. I think it's going to be difficult against this Houston defense.
Yeah, no.
On the other hand, by the way, Houston's defense they're the team that gave up the 200-plus yards on 9 completions to Anthony Richardson and probably should have given up 2 other 50-yarders in there. So there might be some of those big play opportunities as well. That was a surprise to me coming out of Sunday.
No, it's going to be interesting to see what that side of it looks like as well with Houston's defense. Can they really put them under pressure and cause those kinds of issues? Or is it – because, there was some plays there to be made against Tennessee for Caleb Williams, and he didn't hit them. On the other hand, Anthony Richardson did make some plays against Houston's defense. Is that defense actually at that level? And then the flip side of that is the Bears defense. Like that, they had a very good overall performance against Will Levis. can they do the same thing against what we expect to be a dramatically better offense in Houston?
Bears had a 51.4 team run defense grade against the Titans. And again, one of my stories coming out of the week one was the Texans run game and Joe Mixon and what they were able to do up front. So if Houston continues to do that, again, remember last year, C.J. Stroud was awesome. Nico Collins broke out. They added Stephon Diggs this year. The playmakers, the quarterback, the way I like to look at team building, QB, offensive line, and playmakers, everything looking pretty good in Houston. But now the running back situation with Mixon, just getting the 4, 5, or 6 that are there, maximizing the run blocking up front, keeping them on schedule as another answer, I thought added a great weapon to the Texans offense.
You saw the next gen kind of run chart for Mixon that went around, like how many carries he had in the.
It was a long of 13 yards or something.
But the important part is, of all the carries that he had, one was a failure in terms of yardage, right? One gained negative or 0 yards. So
that's what it was. Yeah.
That's the thing. Like Callahan talked about this before the season. We know that's what Bobby covets as well. Like this is the thing that people want from the run game is they don't want negative plays, right? They just want positive, keeping at least pace with the chains, keeping yourself on schedule with that run game and being able to lean on it. Mixon, like 100% ticked that box in week one, and now we get to see if he can do it again against Chicago.
Yeah, man, I'm looking forward to this. Chicago's pass rush was pretty good. Again, against a Titans offensive line that I think, has their own question marks, but Darrell Taylor had a big game against J.C. Latham. I'm not expecting that as much against Laramie Tunsil.
No.
So this is one of those, how much do you project what you saw in week one? It's a whole different matchup in week two. Houston's favored by 6.5 here for a reason. And I think coming off of a tough road win in the division against Indianapolis, I like Houston a lot. And if the Bears didn't have a blocked punt, these two teams, by the way, the Bears were the team that blocked a punt to get them back into a game. Houston allowed a blocked punt to allow the Colts into the game. Those are either, hey, maybe that happens again this week, but it's more likely like those are rare things that made the Bears game closer and made the Texans game closer maybe than it should have been.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like you take it away and say, well, it doesn't count because of this, but those are random plays effectively that don't tend to repeat. Like there are not teams out there that block, 7 punts over the course of the year and they're just a punt blocking specialist side and that's part of their game. You have to factor in every now and again somebody's going to make a play on special teams and it changes radically the overall course of that game. And that happened in both of these or in the game for each one of these teams that I think alters how they were actually performing. I mean, you sort of track those, the win probability graphs where it skews in one team's direction for a while. Tennessee's, like that game was headed in Tennessee's direction for the majority of the game, and it jumps back in a big way to Chicago with that block punt. So you can look at week one and argue that Chicago weren't as good as they ended up being because of that blocked punt, and Houston was better than they ended up being because of that blocked punt. So you put those two things together and you end up with a line that looks a lot like this. And I'm kind of agreeing with you. I'm not quite as high on Houston as you are, but I do think that they cover this line.
We talked about it a little bit off air. Isn't it funny in week one, the biggest line was Cincinnati and New England, and it got up as high as 9.5, but I think it ended about 8.5. Not much else over 6.
Yeah.
And this week, all of a sudden, you have more. Like you have 1 week of information. This team looked great, this team looked bad, and all of a sudden the lines stretch, right? Yeah. And you have these bigger lines here, including this one with Houston.
Right. There's still no double-digit lines, but we have a lot of lines that are suddenly, way over a field goal.
All right, where are you going with this one? Houston by 6.5.
Houston.
I will also take the Texans. Man, I'm going to take all the favorites and see what happens. So that's your Sunday night football game. Your Monday night football game is the Atlanta Falcons at the Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles favored by 6.5 here. Kirk Cousins coming off of a rough game last week. A lot of things went wrong in Atlanta, especially in the pass game. And for the Falcons now, they're 0-1, disappointing loss against the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yep.
And what you're banking on is primetime Kirk Cousins to show up this week, Monday night against the Eagles, and then next week they're on Sunday Night Football hosting the Chiefs.
Yeah.
And so your 0-1 Falcons are looking 0-3 in the face unless primetime Kirk comes up big here against the Eagles and or the Chiefs here. So Falcons at the Eagles, Monday Night Football, almost a touchdown line here.
Yeah, I mean, the Falcons looked terrible on offense in week one. And it was really everything. Like, very little looked good. Like, Bijan Robinson looked fantastic, and he ended up averaging like 3.8 yards per attempt or something. Like, that was the best thing they had going for them. And from a outside
crisp too. I thought they started much better.
But from an outside box score perspective, it looks like Bijan had a crappy game. That's how bad things were for Atlanta, that their best thing didn't look great once you sort of reflect back on it. So they need a dramatically different outcome or performance this week. The Kirk Cousins thing was a train wreck. We kind of talked about it a little bit in the last show. Everything wasn't good. Like, it's very difficult to say, oh, here's your problem. This has got to fix, and then we're good. Like, everything was rough. So that makes it quite kind of difficult to know where to start in terms of how do we get this back on track. One thing that should be different, I think, this week is Philadelphia doesn't have TJ Watt. Like, they don't have one guy that is going to absolutely murder your right tackle and put him under pressure basically every single snap. In fact, when you look at that defensive line in Philly, we tend to think of it as a constant strength for the Eagles and, the Philadelphia pass rush, it's going to be another long day for Atlanta. I mean, it might be because the offense has changed, because the 3 of the 5 offensive linemen might not be great as pass blockers, but Jordan Davis is probably their best pass rusher at this point, and he'll be a problem on the inside, but we didn't see anything from Bryce Huff in that first game against Green Bay. Brandon Graham might be their best edge rusher still at 187 years old, playing 25 snaps a game. It's certainly an easier time of it, I think, than it was last week. So if they still get wrecked up front, they're in real trouble.
How much do I blame where'd the Packers pass rush grade end up? Because the Packers pass rush grade, just looking at PFF team, where's the Packers? I can't find it right here. Because the Eagles they're 22nd. Packers are, wow, I just can't find the team name. That's a good job by me. Packers are there somewhere. How much was the turf was the point I was trying to.
The slippy turf.
The slippy turf.
Uh-huh.
So the slippy turf affected the game the other day in Brazil. Why can't I find the words Green Bay Packers?
What is wrong with you?
I'm going to take 2 seconds.
Just talk amongst yourselves.
I can just control.
Does this?
I can control F it.
You can, yeah.
There we go. They were 20th. I mean, the Packers should have a better pass rush than that. The Eagles should have a better pass rush than that. So I'm chalking it up to Brazil. Now you're back in Philly. And you got the home crowd. And there's Slippy Sam shirt. There's our first shirt. Well done, Slippy Sam.
Slippy. So it's one of those words that it's one of those words that Americans don't use, but it's a word. Like, it's British English, if you like, from the British Isles. It's a word. It's a word. Don't blame me.
We just need a British Isles shirt with your face in the middle of that.
You could piss off so many people if you put that map that I sent you on a T-shirt and just your face in the bottom corner.
And you're all the
You'd
same.
Make so many people mad.
You're all the same.
Yeah.
You're all from the Isles together. Anyway, all those points. The point we made about the Falcons' offensive line is: are they built to be a pure drop back pass blocking team? In week one, they're not. Now, TJ Watt is better than everybody on the Eagles, yes. And the Steelers also have depth with Alex Highsmith and with Cameron Hayward. They have a good pass rush. And I think we're going to look back and the Steelers might have a top 3 pass rush if everybody stays healthy this year. But the Eagles have that kind of potential. So it's the same thing. Like, our friend Zach does need to do more to create deception in the pass game. I don't know if it's about moving Kirk Cousins off the spot, but more play action, a little bit more deception, a little bit more to keep the pass rush, to protect that offensive line, man. Because if Kirk is just a sitting duck back there, Steelers, Eagles, the Panthers might be actually getting, home against this Falcons team. So They got to do something different.
I don't think that Eagles defensive line is as good as it's been in years past, and I don't think it's as good as Pittsburgh. So it should be an opportunity for this Atlanta offensive line to show that they're better than they were last week. So if they do, I think that's a significant step in the right direction for this offense being more functional. I agree with you. I think generally they need to start mixing in a few, bootlegs or rollouts or something just to freeze the pass rush on the edge. And again, give Cousins a chance. It's not like we saw the touchdown to Kyle Pitts. He got out and he moved. Cousins has never been athletic. It's not like he's going to look like Lamar Jackson out there, but he showed he can hobble around and be fine. It's not that the guy can't function on that leg, I don't think.
So by the way, using PFF grades to describe Bijan last week too. He had all those carries you talked about, finished with a very good rushing grade at 79, good receiving grade at 86.7. They were feeding him on third downs, 87 overall grade. That was what people were asking for last year, get him the ball. So check on that, check mark on that one so far. Now it's a matter of Drake London needs to be involved, making plays, more Kyle Pitts, and then Cousins needs to be back to seeing the field and working through his progressions and throwing the ball accurately the way he has been in the past. If they can do all that, then the Falcons maybe live up to some of the preseason hype that we expected.
Yeah, we just need to see several aspects of that offense taking a significant turn for the good. Otherwise, Atlanta could be in trouble.
On the other side, I think the Eagles played a sloppy game and still scored over 30 points, win a game against a good Packers team. And that would be the encouraging sign, I think, for the Eagles. Jalen Hurts had 4 turnover-worthy plays, got away with some of them. He's got to play a little bit cleaner. But we saw Saquon Barkley, the explosiveness that he brings to the table, both in the pass game and in the run game. A.J. Brown can turn the game in a second. Last week we were discussing about the Falcons' depth at corner, where it's A.J. Terrell and then question marks in the secondary. That's going to be tough to match up with against this Eagles team. Devontae Smith being a slot-heavy player now. I think he's going to get his against this Falcons defense. A.J. Brown can get his. It's going to be really tough to slow down this Eagles offense unless Jalen Hurts turns it over.
Yeah, no, it will be. I think that A.J. Terrell against A.J. Brown will be a fun matchup when they match up, but the name of the game for Philadelphia is basically throw to whoever is not being covered by A.J. Terrell. Just target the other two guys.
The last thing I just wanted to highlight on that matchup, Falcons pass rush grade last week, third worst in the NFL.
They still don't have pass
against the Steelers offensive line that you would say, hey, they've had some injuries, they got a rookie center, you should have some opportunities here. We had concerns about the Falcons pass rush going into the offseason. They trade for Matthew Judon. That was supposed to help. They were not getting after Justin Fields well at all. Now, the Steelers used a lot of play action, a lot of things to keep them off the scent. But this Eagles offensive line should do a much better job, should be better than the Steelers too. So it's going to be tough for the Falcons, putting pressure on Hurts.
Yeah, that defense is still going into the year, we were like, oh, the Atlanta defense is going to be the weak side of that team, but at least the offense should be really good, and that should be enough to propel them to the division, to the playoffs, et cetera, et cetera. Well, now, the defense is still that. It's still the concerning side of the ball, but now the offense completely laid an egg in week 1. Now you're like, well, what if the entire team just stinks?
I was going to say Atlanta in this game, but Philly by 6.5. Do I keep my trend of taking all these touchdown favorites, essentially? I think I'm going to. 6.5, Sam, Monday Night Football, Falcons at the Eagles. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going with the Eagles as well, and the line is moving in that direction as well. I just was so concerned by what we saw from Atlanta in week 1. Until I see that turn around, I'm not picking it.
Yeah, agree. We don't want to overreact, but just react. Just react accordingly. Right. I'll take Philly to cover it as well. That's what's fascinating about this week, even the next game here. You have a bunch of teams that are either coming off wins or you thought were going to be good, like Atlanta, and some touchdown lines here. Same here. New Orleans Saints at the Dallas Cowboys. Cowboys are favored by 6.5.
Yeah.
So you're talking about the Saints team, most dominant win in week 1, but the line suggests Vegas thinks it's Carolina's fault, that they're just awful. You also have New Orleans being a little bit different at the dome, in the dome, and Dallas is coming off of a double-digit win in Cleveland against a presumed good Browns team. So that's pretty impressive for the Cowboys. They're coming home now with the 6.5 point favorites against the Saints.
Yeah, so the kind of transitive properties of team beating team, like Vegas clearly thinks that Carolina is utterly awful. And the Saints absolutely annihilating them in week 1 is not real. And actually, now that they face a better team, particularly on the road, which is a significant difference for New Orleans.
And I mentioned I may have apologized, or I said I'll wait a couple weeks before I apologize to the Saints offensive line in particular, but we gave them a shout out on Monday's show, right? The Saints offensive line, you said their tackles in particular, Talise Fuanga, the rookie left tackle, Trevor Penning at right tackle, they were outstanding in week 1. Their guards were good. Eric McCoy is one of the best centers in the league. How much of that was them? How much of that was Carolina?
Yeah.
And you can't go from a bigger difference in defensive front from what Carolina has to what Dallas has.
Yeah, that's a perfect example. Like that Saints offensive line was very, very good. However, they were facing a defensive front that has basically no pass rush threat. Derek Brown is now hurt and out for the year as well, so their best player is gone. It's basically Jadeveon Clowney is the only guy that's even remotely capable of a reasonably high-end game in isolation. Now you're going to Dallas, who have Micah Parsons, who's as good as it gets on the defensive line. And they've got several other threats as well. Like this, it's going from probably the team that will have the worst pass rush in the NFL this season to a team that has Micah Parsons, who's amazing, DeMarcus Lawrence, who's a really good player, and then like support players like Marshawn Neal and the rookie Odighizuwa on the inside. Like they have threats to bring to the table. Completely different ask. Like it's just a completely different test. And maybe if they hold up this week as well, then totally different team.
Like
we are now. We're in a completely different world. But you can't not factor in the opposition when you're talking about that offensive line.
I mean, if the Saints win this week and they look good doing it, I mean, even if they just pull it off against a good Dallas team, then it's almost like I'll just revert back to what I thought they were going to be last year. You said this
right.
In week 1. Every week I'm like, I believe in the Saints. I believe in the Saints. I think they've got playmakers. I think Derek Carr, if he's a little aggressive, can make things happen here. He was unbelievable in week 1, Derek Carr. Aggressiveness, throwing the ball down the field. My question here is, can you do that in this week against Dallas? I don't know if you're going to have the time to get the ball down the field to Rashid Shaheed the way you want to a couple times a game. I don't know if they're going to have the ability to create some of those field flipping plays that they did last week because of this Dallas pass rush.
Yeah, I mean, it's a completely different prospect that they're dealing with. And then that has a knock-on effect on everything, right? Because now you're like, well, is Derek Carr capable of having the type of game that he had last week if he's under a lot more pressure? Is Rashid Shaheed the type of threat that he is last week if Derek Carr is under pressure a lot more? So completely different task for the New Orleans offense going up against this Dallas defense. But then the other element is, the Saints defense is really good as well. Like the most impressive thing, okay, again, Carolina, Bryce Young, catastrophe. Jay Gruden was breaking it all down. Bryce Young, there's no evidence yet.
Is Bryce Young and the Panthers, are they, for you, a weather game?
Yeah, pretty much. Throw it out. It's meaningless.
Like a weather game.
I will say, though, that when you watch that New Orleans defense against Bryce Young and the Carolina offense, okay, obviously they were in the ascendancy. They were getting big plays. One of the most impressive things, though, was the kind of blitz packages that they had. Like they were showing a lot of looks at the line that were problematic for Bryce Young to deal with, whether it was that 3rd and 11 play we talked about before, but they had a couple of other third down sacks as well, where they were consistently able to show a difficult look to diagnose at the line of scrimmage and end up with a free rusher or an extra guy that Bryce Young wasn't picking up. And okay, Dak Prescott is going to be better equipped than Bryce Young to deal with that, but they were difficult looks to deal with in addition to having some good defensive players. I mean, Chase Young had a solid game. Like they were able to get players schemed up, and they have some players to win one-on-ones as well.
You're absolutely right about them dialing it up. But again, I like using the PFF grades to kind of tell a story here. The Saints had the 5th lowest pass rush grade as a team last week. And what that usually says is the Alontae Taylor plays, as you mentioned, like you credit the scheme, and then he finished them for the 3 sacks. They weren't, other than Chase Young, winning those one-on-ones up front against the Panthers. So to me, this was the reason why it was so concerning about Bryce Young, and go listen to Jay Gruden talk about it yesterday. Some of those were unforced errors, right? He wasn't under pressure a ton. He was just off and bad. And so if the Saints aren't getting home, and I still have concerns about their front four, maybe beyond Chase Young, concerns about their front four, getting pressure, holding up against the run, Dallas's offensive line, I think, is going to have way more success. Or more so, their passing attack can have way more success if they have time to throw.
Yeah.
The concern for Dallas now is, I thought they did a great job getting CD Lamb involved, saying, hey, he's our playmaker, attack, get him early. Brandon Cooks has the two. Jake Ferguson's banged up at tight end. It was supposed to be a 2 to 4 week injury. There's talk about him playing this week. I don't think so, though. So he's probably out this week. Dallas's depth at pass catcher, I thought, was a concern coming into the season, and still is a concern now that they have a Jake Ferguson injury at tight end.
Yeah. No, I think I do think that the Saints defense can cause some problems for that Dallas offense. My question is simply, I am concerned that Vegas is correct and that Carolina is just so bad that everything we saw from New Orleans in week 1 is fool's gold. And against a real team like Dallas, it's just not going to look anything like that.
I'll also project a little bit of Dennis Allen as head coach, what we've seen from the Saints through the years, those ebbs and flows. I'm just remembering my emotional state trying to predict what the Saints were going to do last year. Every time they started to look good, they disappoint. When they disappoint and I'm out, they would come back. So that kind of a roller coaster ride for the Saints over the last couple of years. And again, I think that's reflected in the line, 6.5 in favor of Dallas. So where are you going with this game here?
I don't like it, but I'm going with the Saints to cover 6.5. I feel like they were too good week 1 to be essentially a touchdown underdog even on the road.
All right, I'll take the Cowboys again. I'm taking those favorites, those 6.5 point favorites across the board. Someone's going to let me down, but give me the Cowboys here. And I think they're at home, and they're going to look good. San Francisco 49ers at the Minnesota Vikings. Niners favored by 6.5 here on the road in Minnesota, where they lost last year, 22-17 on Monday Night Football.
Not just lost, but Brock Purdy had a pretty rough game, had a couple of turnover-worthy plays that were really bad, like total confusion turnover-worthy plays. So that was this Minnesota Vikings defense, this Brian Flores defense that is maybe the most confusing defense in the NFL for an opposing quarterback to diagnose. It's different than most other schemes, if not all other schemes. It's extremely confusing. They operate with a ton of, misdirection, disguise, confusion, and Brock Purdy in that game didn't understand the rules, right? And whether it's Brock Purdy or Brock Purdy and Kyle Shanahan, whatever, the combination that is usually a step ahead was a step behind. And now, okay, they've seen it, a game this time. Like they played it last year, so they've got experience of what it looks like. But the Vikings defense has upgraded personnel. They've got better pass rushers now. They've got more dynamic players up front that can do more things. I'm really fascinated to see what this looks like this time around. Is Flores' scheme still going to be ahead, or has Shanahan worked it out, having seen it last year?
Now, there is no this is not statistically valid or, responsible.
Then by all means.
I'm going to be statistically irresponsible.
Okay.
Right now is what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
This 49ers-Vikings matchup is a battle of PFF's two highest-graded quarterbacks, Brock Purdy versus Sam Darnold.
Okay.
Just stating facts.
You are.
The highest-graded quarterbacks coming out of week 1 here,
As
of course.
A million people in the chat have just pointed out, it's also a Sam Darnold revenge game.
It is a Sam Darnold revenge game. If someone knows Kyle Shanahan's offense, it might be Sam Darnold, who has spent a year there.
Yeah.
Whatever that means. But it's also Sam Darnold in the week 1, 2, 3 bubble. He's in the bubble. It's a revenge game. There's a lot working here.
I mean, I'm more interested in almost the other side of it. Like Darnold knows the 49ers defense. So like that side of things, actually, like Darnold, number one, in his 3-week run where we expect him to be good, he is facing a defense that he should be intimately familiar with, having practiced against it,
it's a new
for a whole
defense,
season.
though. Nick Sorensen taking over.
It is, but it's not radically different. He has effectively faced this type of defense for a year in practice. Meanwhile, on the other side of the ball, it's Shanahan's offense. And this is basically the one defensive scheme that caused it major problems, like caused it to malfunction. Because Shanahan's offense is generally about, I understand your rules on defense. I know where the weak spots are. I'm going to push those buttons.
Flores just has no rules. You
Right.
don't know where they are.
Well, he has rules. They're just different to everybody else, right? So Shanahan last year didn't know what the rules were, or Brock Purdy didn't, or as I say, the combination of the two. The point being, the thing that they normally do to cause problems for every other defense in the NFL didn't work for against Flores' defense because they guessed wrong. What they thought was going to be a rule was not the rule, and suddenly a safety pops up in the middle of nowhere.
At the time, let me go back.
Well, the confounding factor is they were also missing players in that game, which is always the problem. Like were they missing both Debo and Trent Williams? Certainly one of the two. And those are two of their most important players.
But Brock Purdy, I remember at the time, because everybody was overreacting. Oh, he's not making couldn't make a fourth quarter comeback, couldn't do it with the game on the line, and he threw 2 actual interceptions. At the time last year, this happened in Week 7. Brock Purdy had 1 interception coming into the game against Minnesota, Monday Night Football. But you know me, I'm over there like, well, yeah, Week 1 he had 2 turnover-worthy plays, no picks. Week 3 he had 2 turnover-worthy plays in prime time against the Giants. They both got dropped. He had 3 turnover-worthy plays the week before against Cleveland in the slippy game in the rain, right? But only one of them was picked. And against Minnesota, it was like, oh, he had 2 turnover-worthy plays. Both of them got caught that particular week. So it wasn't this massive narrative shift.
Yeah, but
they got caught this time.
But if you watch the plays that week, like they got caught because there was a guy standing there that they didn't expect to be there. Like it's different to, I'm trying to make a play and I've left it too far inside and the guy's able to make a break on the ball. Like they literally hadn't anticipated that a safety would just be standing there in that spot, and they tried to loft one of the classic 49ers plays. I'm going to lob that deep crosser over to Brandon Ayuk, who's going to catch it on the run, have 15 more yards of run after the catch ability. Only the spot he's expecting the ball to arrive at, Cameron Bynum is just waiting for it to drop out of the sky. Like it's a lot easier to catch those balls when that's the dynamic at play here. And the question is, has Shanahan worked out the rules to Flores' defense, having seen it and made mistakes against it last year?
One more dynamic I want to add to this. For the first time in history, I think I mentioned this yesterday, first time in history we can make the statement, the Kyle Shanahan quarterback is playing better than his stats would show, right? It's usually the other way around. If Brock Purdy played pretty well last week, he had a beautiful touchdown pass dropped by Brandon Ayuk in the end zone, finished the game with no touchdowns and no interceptions, no gaudy passer rating or anything, but he played really well. And my preseason prediction was, by the way, year 3 for Brock Purdy, he might be getting better.
Yeah.
There's a chance that he gets better, and through 1 week, Brandon Ayuk's not going to drop that pass every single time, right? You still have all those playmakers. So this Niners offense could be more dangerous than ever. They put up 32 against presumably a good Jets defense without Christian McCaffrey, with the receivers dropping passes. They might be more dangerous than ever.
Yeah, I mean, quietly, everyone is so caught up with debating just how good Brock Purdy is on a constant basis that I don't know how many people have been paying attention to the idea that he has consistently gotten better for his entire NFL career. Like from day 1 of starting, he has gotten fairly steadily better all the way through. So we're now dealing with like half a season to begin with, and then a full season, and now week 1, right?
And we usually push back and say, look, that doesn't always happen.
Yeah.
But sometimes it does.
Right. And it might not
Purdy,
be.
He's been trending up.
It might not be permanent, like he might regress or it might whatever. But so far, over half a season of starting and then a full season of starting and now 1 game, he has just gotten incrementally, steadily, step after step better. He was pretty good right away, and the stats were making him look like Tom Brady. And then year 2, He was a little bit better than that in the first half of the season. He was a little bit better than that in the second half of the season. And then week 1 against the Jets, he was arguably the best we've seen him, was really, really good, and should have had a touchdown, and the stats should have been slightly better. But again, like, we're sort of, it's not a static thing. We're not looking at this guy and saying, how good is he, period? Because he's not been the same level of good for his career. He's getting better and better and better. And that makes the offense for the 49ers harder and harder and harder to stop, because their quarterback is becoming the elite player that the statistics say he's always been.
This is one of the matchups of the week. Kyle Shanahan.
Schematically, this is as good as it gets, and maybe as good as it gets in the entire NFL this season. I mean, this is the best offensive scheme in the NFL, going against the one defense that's already caused it to glitch out last season and break down. And as I said, the Vikings defense has upgraded personnel in several areas. Quietly, Stephon Gilmore had a really good week 1, like the kind of emergency signing at cornerback to come in, having had so many problems at corner. Now, again, what was your opposition? It was Daniel Jones having an absolute meltdown because of the defense. But, Gilmore looks like he's going to be a really good signing for this team. Van Ginkel is insanely versatile and had an amazing debut game for them. This defense has got teeth now to go along with the schematic advantage, schematic prowess. 4
players with 4+ pressures last week. Pretty stout against the run against the Giants. I'm looking forward to this matchup. Niners by 6.5 on the road in Minnesota. Where are you going with this one?
I am going to go with the Vikings.
Yeah, I typed in Vikings.
Yeah?
Yeah.
That usually means you pick the Vikings.
It usually means that. But I feel like I'm talking myself out of it again. I'm overrating what we saw on Monday Night Football last year. So I'm just going to keep taking the favorites.
I mean, I'm fascinated by...
I'll take the Niners.
I'm fascinated by how much Shanahan has been able to diagnose and figure out the defense based off last season, right? Like, I don't know how long it takes him to figure out what the rules are for a defense like that. It definitely caused them major problems last time around. I don't know how much also Flores has changed the rules between last year and this year. But for the first time in a long time, Shanahan, I think, is facing a defense where he's coming at the game from behind the 8 ball. Normally, he's the guy ahead, and everybody else is trying to figure out how they catch up and overtake him schematically. For the first time, he's coming from behind, so to speak, and is trying to attack the defense and get ahead.
I'll take the Niners. You'll take the Vikings. We'll get on to the next game in a minute. Going to tell you about our friends over at Factor. Trust me, it's time for you to get Factor's no prep, no mess meals. Meet your wellness goals thanks to the menu of chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes if you have a microwave, which I don't, but it's just 7 minutes for me. It's great. So no matter how busy you are, you'll always have time to enjoy nutritious, great-tasting meals. Make today the day you kickstart your new healthy routine. What are you waiting for? With 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week, you'll always have new flavors to explore. Crush your wellness goals this month with dietitian-approved meals and ingredients that you can trust. Make your day delicious from breakfast to dessert. Stay fueled with easy, nutritious options. Treat yourself to restaurant-quality meals that feature premium ingredients like filet mignon, shrimp, and blackened salmon. Keep kitchen time to a minimum and no shopping, prepping, cooking, or cleaning up. Enjoy effortless support for your lifestyle. Choose from 6 menu preferences to help you manage calories, maximize protein intake, and avoid meat if you want to avoid meat. I don't want to do that.
No.
You could simply just eat well balanced. But all those options are on the table at Factor. So head to factormeals.com/SamandSteve50 and use code SamandSteve50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code SamandSteve50 at factormeals.com/SamandSteve50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. Go check it out right now. All right, let's go Indianapolis Colts at the Green Bay Packers. Sunday afternoon, 1 o'clock. The Colts are favored by 3 here at Green Bay because the expectation is that Malik Willis is getting the start in favor of the injured Jordan Love for the Packers.
Yeah, I feel like and it's moved in that direction towards the Colts. I sort of feel like the initial line was expecting Green Bay to probably sign somebody like Ryan Tannehill off the street and not start Malik Willis. Instead, they've been like, no, Malik's the backup or Malik's the starter now, and who's their backup that they benched, or not benched, but
Sean Clifford.
There you go. Sean Clifford is going to be the backup, having been the backup before, and then gotten jumped by Malik Willis. So I sort of feel like the expectation was for Malik Willis not to be starting this game, and yet that's where they are. I'm going to be fascinated to see what LaFleur dials up for a Malik Willis game plan, because so far in the NFL, he has not shown development. He's not really shown any sign that there is a viable game plan for him to execute at this level. Like, he just doesn't look, he's a one read and run quarterback, and you tend to need more than that to succeed in the NFL.
Remember, he started on Sunday Night Football against the Chiefs a couple years ago, and they went to overtime, and Malik Willis completed like 5 passes. I mean, part of the reason why it was so shocking when Mike Vrabel got fired was because of games like that, where it felt like you've got your Titans team just overachieving because Malik Willis is completely overwhelmed. But what Tennessee, I didn't think that they leaned into his running ability enough.
Yeah.
Just go full board. I mean, remember years ago, 2016, when Jacoby Brissett, who's not even that fast, but he had to start for New England, and it looked like Navy triple option. Like, they went to this extreme level of, he's our third string quarterback. He's young. He's not developed as a passer yet. Like, let's just do something different. And I think that's what you're asking, right? Like, will Matt LaFleur lean into it that much? Like, Malik Willis is going to run 22 times and then only run play action off of that, and let's see what we can do.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I do think that you can, like a one read and run quarterback, I think you can create a game plan that makes that work, but only for a short period of time. Like, that can't be your offense. That can't work for 17 games in a season. But I think it can definitely shock a team, 1 week. Oh no, this is completely different from everything we're used to seeing. How do we stop this? I think once once you have like six weeks of that on tape, you can definitely go, okay, that's just not going to work anymore. We need the next iteration of this offense. But that's why I'm actually interested in this game. Generally, I don't think Malik Willis is an NFL quarterback at all, but I do think that Matt LaFleur is a good enough offensive coach and play caller to be able to dial something up for 1 week that is very difficult to contain.
LaFleur's being coy, by the way, saying that the door's open for Jordan Love to play.
Yeah, but
it's being coy.
Anybody really thinks that. And then the other element is what you said, that I don't think Tennessee ever, maybe they don't, but at this point, if I was the Green Bay Packers, I would be of the opinion that Malik Willis is probably never going to be an NFL quarterback. But so at that point, you don't need to work on having him do things correctly or the honest, playing the game the honest way. You can say, all right, we have what we have, which is a one read and run quarterback, but he's a hell of an athlete and has a hell of a cannon for an arm. If we lean into that, we can create a devastating game plan for a one-off game, which is basically what I think they're trying to do. Get through 1 or 2 games in a very difficult to stop offense that can surprise somebody, and then by the time everybody works it out, we're back to Jordan Love and we never have to see it again. That, I think, is effectively the challenge for Matt LaFleur right now.
One line I would like to see in this game is over-under on number of total completions expected in the game between Malik Willis and Anthony Richardson.
Oh, combined.
Combined, because Richardson had 9. Look, I keep referencing this game because it was so fascinating. Richardson did not have games like this last year where he was completing 9 passes for 200 yards. This is an anomaly, but Richardson, because he's so young as a quarterback prospect, I was looking this up. He's only started 1 road game in the NFL, and he did not finish it. It was last year. He got hurt in Houston. And going back to college, he's only played 5 road games. This is his first road game outdoors in the NFL in Green Bay. And it's his 5th road game ever as a starter between college and the NFL. He's got 5. This will be his 6th. Played a neutral game against Georgia, of course, as you know, in Jacksonville. But a couple games, Texas A&M and Tennessee, the game against Houston last year that he didn't finish. But he's pretty much played at home all the time for Indianapolis. Just a little interesting tidbit, I think, leading into this game.
Yeah.
If you're like, hey, I never see Anthony Richardson play on the road, it's true. He never has.
He never has.
Almost never has.
Played on the road.
But I really want to see. Again, Jake Gruden mentioned this yesterday. Like the putting Anthony Richardson right next to Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. We've talked about that a bunch. What that can do for the running attack, and Jake Gruden saying, "Man, this team should lead the league in rushing." And I agree. I think he's right. Between what the offensive line did, number one run blocking offensive line in the league last week per PFF were the Colts. So I like their line. Richardson had 56 yards on the ground. Jonathan Taylor, I think, is still going to be fine. Green Bay had some of their gap control issues that showed up last year, right? Saquon Barkley, a couple big runs in there. So I think the Colts have a chance to run like crazy against the Packers here.
Yeah, I think Renner was saying, the late Michael Renner, who's now with CBS, was saying that he thinks the Colts, from a personnel talent standpoint on offense, have a top 3 offense in the NFL, which feels pretty aggressive. But
so we were texting yesterday because he was talking about a couple of his draft takes that have looked good early on. And A.D. Mitchell, I didn't realize how high he was on A.D. Mitchell. He had him at 14 on his board. Yeah. So that's probably skewing some of his opinion there is, boy, we have A.D. Mitchell and Alec Pierce is making these plays and Pittman and this offensive line. It's a top 3 offensive line. It is a legitimate, deep offensive line where they're good across the board. And then however you want, like how do you place Richardson with his special big play ability, inconsistency, inaccuracy, special running ability, but it's like, I kind of get it. Like they're close. If Richardson just eliminates a couple of those big misses per game, you could see them accidentally scoring 28, 30 points a game.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible. There's a lot of talent there. I mean, top 3 feels quite aggressive to me. But
might be aggressive.
But the point being, that's the kind of potential a lot of people think that this team has.
Yeah, there's a lot there. So, yeah, I think this depends on what Green Bay is able to do defensively against the Colts, and then with Malik Willis on offense, how they're able to, I think, scheme it up. Because it's a different skill set from what Jordan Love's bringing to the table.
Yeah, definitely.
For the Packers.
Other side of the ball, staying on that side of the ball for a moment, I'm curious to see if we can get a better game out of Laiatu Latu. Rasheed Walker versus Laramie Tunsil is a fairly significant downgrade. Rasheed Walker's fine. Like, he's a capable starting tackle, but he's not the best pass blocking tackle in the NFL, which was Latu's debut rookie assignment effectively.
Yeah.
So does he immediately look like a much better player going up against just an average offensive tackle versus an elite one?
In addition to Indy moving pieces around, they lined up DeForest Buckner one-on-one with Laramie Tunsil a couple times last week. That could work against Walker as well. I think that's a great change of pace just to give tackles a different body type to look at. 6'7", 290 pounds, DeForest Buckner. So kind of like what Indy was doing with their defensive front last week from a pass rush perspective. I expect Latu to have more success as well. So where are you going with this one? Indy's favored by 3, of course, because if Malik Willis isn't playing and Jordan Love is playing, you're probably talking about Green Bay favored by a couple points, I would think.
Yeah. I generally have been of the opinion that I don't think Malik Willis is particularly good, therefore I'll take basically whatever the line is against him. But the more I talk myself into the crafting a game plan for him on a one-off game, the more I think there's a chance that could actually work.
See, that's the exact reason why I'm not good at actually picking games.
Yeah.
Is because I craft a picture in my head of what people are going to do or what the game plan is going to be and just assume that's the case.
Right.
That's what you're doing right now.
Yeah. So I'm still going to take the Colts. I'm going to stick with my initial feeling, but the more I think about it, the more I think there's actually a solid chance LaFleur weaves some magic, and this is a functional offense for a one-off game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing what they do as well. I'll take Indy, though, as the road favorites here. All right, Cleveland Browns at the Jacksonville Jaguars, Sunday at 1. Jags favored by 3 here. Started at 3.5, down to 3 here as we head into the weekend.
Mm-hmm. Terrible debut for the Browns. Just got wrecked by Dallas, both sides of the ball.
At home.
Yeah. Deshaun Watson looked horrendous again. There's now extra accusations out there for him. He's dealing with more off-field stuff in addition to the on-field stuff being atrocious. This combination, so they brought in Ken Dorsey, right, because the whole offseason, the whole thing in Cleveland has been, let's try and get Deshaun Watson back to being Deshaun Watson. Clearly, he hasn't been a good fit in Stefanski's offense. So the answer to that is, well, let's bring in a different coach. Let's try and get somewhere different. And so they bring in Ken Dorsey. They haven't, however, gone wholesale into that. It's some sort of compromise offense at the moment where Dorsey has his input. Stefanski, I think, is still calling the plays. There's still a groundwork of Stefanski's offense. I sort of feel like you either need to do it completely or not at all, right? Either it's your offense and that's what you run and just figure out a way of making it work, or you've acknowledged that your offense and that quarterback doesn't mesh together, so bring in somebody else and let him do the offense. At the moment, they seem to be trying to make those two things try and meet in the middle, and you end up in just this horrible nightmare of a compromise offense that's not working any better either. So I feel like needs to change, but the offense generally has just been wretched because their quarterback stinks.
Yeah, I mean, I was summing it up on Sunday, basically saying the Browns' offense has no rhythm, and everything you just described, right? Is it too many chefs? Is it too much input? Is it too many different styles converging? There's just no rhythm. Like what? Not just what does Deshaun Watson do well? What does the Browns' offense under Deshaun Watson do well?
Yeah.
Is it under center running? Is it play action? Do they move the pocket? Do they create big plays? Are they do they attack the underneath? Like, they don't do any particular thing well to hang their hat on in the 13 games where Deshaun Watson's been a starter.
We've had this conversation previously as well. I feel like the Browns offense has also got into the territory of sometimes when you're desperately trying to make life easier for a quarterback and simplify what you're asking of him and reduce the amount you want him to do, you end up effectively having the exact opposite effect of the one you're trying to create, because what you do is you strip back all the things that the offense is doing, which makes it much easier for the defense to diagnose, right? So one of the things Cleveland did in week one is they basically didn't use pre-snap motion at all, right? The last couple of years has been this explosion in pre-snap motion. It's one of the biggest kind of cheat codes that an offense can deploy because it gives you a read on the defense. It also makes defenses have to adjust quickly pre-snap. It just creates this added layer of chaos for a defense. And as the offense, I think it feels like that's part of let's strip it all back, let's simplify it. But it's a net win having that, even if it's more difficult for the quarterback, even if it's asking him to process some things, and you're trying to take that off his plate. It's a net win because it's more difficult for the defense than it is for your quarterback to do, right? So by taking that away, you might be making life more easier on your quarterback, but you're also making it easier on the defense, and you're making it more easy for the defense than you're making it for your quarterback. So the net effect is negative, right? I feel like this is why it's not working in Cleveland, because they're in this world now where the game, like the majority of their runtime is dedicated to how can we make this easier for our own quarterback, which ends up actually having a worse effect. And the whole thing is just a death spiral until they eventually put Jameis Winston in there.
Before they eventually put Jameis Winston. Countdown to Jameis is on. That's the other interesting aspect, I think, schematically. These are the two teams that played the most man coverage in week one. The Jags by far. I mean, that film against the Dolphins is fascinating to watch.
It's interesting because, it's one thing you think you wouldn't do against the speed that Miami has.
They played over 50% cover one. The Browns were at 38% cover one, right? Cover one's your most common man coverage. And the Jags were by far the number one team in the NFL, just playing pure man. And they did it against one of the scariest offenses, right? With Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle out there. And they just went for it. And it worked in the first half, right? It worked. And remember, I said Monday morning, it worked until the Dolphins playmakers just started making plays. Yeah. And it was just Tyreek Hill's got a step, Tua was hitting him in stride, and it's an 80-yarder. And so you're playing with fire, and it works, and then all of a sudden there's an 80-yarder. But, man, I don't know if this is what new defensive coordinator Ryan Nielsen is just going to do. Tyson Campbell has just gone on IR, their starting corner. He got hurt on Sunday, and he's officially on IR, at least missing the next 4 games as of this morning, per Adam Schefter. But I'll be watching that, man. The Browns already played a lot of man last year. Remember, they came out week one firing under Jim Schwartz, and they were like, we're 4-man rush, playing man, go get them. And there's a lot of boomer bust to that. There's boomer bust to manning up all day, and you saw that in the in the Jags game on Sunday. It worked until it didn't.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see how that looks on both ends, right? The Jags receivers that we've talked a lot about this offseason going up against the Browns' new receivers in Cooper and Judy, if the Jags are still going to man up without Tyson Campbell and guys like Monteric Brown, Trey Flowers, DeAndre Prince trying to fill in that spot.
And it explains why even when the Browns defense was so good last year, it was a little bit boom or bust. Like, it was susceptible to those big plays because that's just an inevitable part of playing that much man coverage.
And the point you made about motion, you want to use motion to create the rubs and the picks and the indecision in the secondary when they're playing man to create those. That's how you scheme people open. So the Browns have to adjust, presumably, if the Jags are going to keep playing man coverage like this.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing I think that's going to be interesting for me, like, Jacksonville has created this team that's just chock full of amazing athletes now, right? And they're not necessarily consistently good football players, but anytime you have a team that's just that freakishly athletic, they're dangerous, right? And now you've got a team that's sporadically dangerous because of the athletic talent that they have going up against a defense that's sporadically susceptible to big plays. Do those two things meet, and do you get the big play on offense at the same time as the defense is going to give up a big play? And is this a recipe for, some explosive plays for Jacksonville? Like Brian Thomas Jr. going up against this aggressive man coverage defense, that has boom or bust potential. Do they shut him down? Or is there going to be a play or two where his athletic ability takes over and he makes a huge play against, a Denzel Ward, a Martin Emerson, a Greg Newsome, something like that? And then the same thing on the other side, right? This is a pretty good pass blocking group from Jacksonville, and a pretty good sort of and the athletic pass rush that they have. Do those guys show up in big plays, or does Cleveland essentially just win by being talent-wise better across the board?
Man, I'm fired up for this matchup too. A lot of man coverage.
It's a good game. I like
a lot
this
of
one.
athletes. The Browns tackle injuries, going up against the Jags pass rush, which I do think is much improved, should be much improved. And they'll have the thing about the Jags pass rush, they were slowed down last week by Miami's quick hitting passing attack. They'll have more opportunities this week, I think, against the Browns.
And for Cleveland, okay, they're down 2 tackles. They only need one of them back, right? Like,
yeah, DeJuan Jones is
good.
He's a starter.
Yeah, he's a perfectly capable, decent starter, particularly in pass protection. So they just need one of those guys back. They just need to get James Hudson out of the starting lineup. They don't need to put DeJuan Jones back on the bench for this to be, back in where they need it to be.
All right, man. Jags by 3. And again, Jags lost a close one on the road in week 1. Browns lost by double digits at home in week 1. Now Cleveland goes to Jacksonville. Jags favored by 3. Where are you going with this one?
Yeah, I mean, that offense is such a mess for Jacksonville, or for Cleveland, rather, that I am buying into the Jags.
Yeah, I hate this so much. I mean, the Browns handled the Jags pretty easily last year because Trevor Lawrence kept turning the ball over. He was playing hurt in that game.
Yeah.
Gosh, I'm taking Cleveland, and I hate it so much. They're better than they showed in week 1. They're better than that. I have no idea if this offense is ever going to be good, though, unless there's Joe Flacco or Jameis Winston.
I feel like it's in a terminal death spiral until Jameis comes in.
I'm fired up for this game, too. Like, the more I talk through these games, the more I'm excited for week 2.
Sometimes you're sort of in such a tough spot trying to get a quarterback comfortable or where he needs to be or the whole thing working. Sometimes you just need the control to come in for a game or two just to figure out where everything is. Like last season with Carolina, it was Andy Dalton. Dalton comes in, actually the offense looks okay. You're like, that sort of suggests the control of Andy Dalton suggests that Bryce Young is actually quite a large part of the problem here. Last season with Cleveland, like we spent so much time being like, why can't Deshaun Watson get back? Joe Flacco rolls in off the couch, and okay, he wasn't great, but he was perfectly functional, and suddenly the offense is putting up a lot of yards.
They were better. They were definitely better.
And they were moving the ball, right? Like he would throw the ball away to defense a few times, but he was moving the ball, putting up yards, and so it's sort of like it's pretty clear that this thing can work. It's the quarterback that's making it not work at the moment. Now, obviously, the problem they have is they are tied to this quarterback because of the contract that he's given them. But at some point, you're going to have to face reality that there's actually no way of making this work, and we just need to eat the biggest mistake that's ever been made in an NFL contract.
All right, 7 more games to discuss. You ready for this?
Yeah.
You ready to go? What I need really quick, though, so far on YouTube, we've had, we appreciate all the viewers. We've had a great subscriber to viewer ratio on our videos. But that suggests that not everybody's subscribed. We know that not everybody's subscribed. We know this is a fact. And all you have to do is hit subscribe.
I feel like we can get
here.
to 10,000 during the show.
During the show. There's almost, probably half the people that are in the chat right now probably aren't subscribed. So you just click the subscribe button.
And then we'll be there.
They're counting it right now. People are pointing out we got to 9.9. It's 9.92. We could probably get to 1,000.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, we
10,
probably
000.
can. So hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, and go and keep going. Let's go. 10,000 by tonight.
By the end of the
the
show.
goal.
That's tonight.
Just hit refresh. It's 9.93.
To the end of by the end of this show.
End of the show, we'll get to
10K.
10,000. So go do it. Seattle Seahawks at the New England Patriots. Seahawks favored by 3.5 here in New England. Just a couple 1-0 teams.
Just a couple of 1-0 teams. Super Bowl rematchup. Super Bowl rematch from back when.
I think this is the first time Seattle has been to New England since 2016. It was the only game that the Tom Brady Patriots lost that year. Remember, Sunday Night Football came down to Brady to Gronk fade pass that failed. So Seattle won in New England, 2016. Tail end of Legion of Boom, Super Bowl rematch a couple years later. So 8 years ago that was.
8 years.
And here we are, 2024. Completely different. But, Seahawks defense was outstanding last week, and the Patriots surprised a lot with how they ran the ball, played some tough defense under Gerard Mayo.
Yeah, the defense, I think, will be the interesting part for New England. Like, was that...
A couple undefeated head coaches, by the way.
Yeah, true. Was that real, or was that Cincinnati being that bad right out of the gate? Is that Patriots defense actually going to be a really good group this season, which honestly is going to be enough to prop them up for a reasonable amount, to keep them away from being one of the worst teams in the NFL? I do sort of feel, though, that the Patriots offense is on track for a hiding against that Seattle defense. Like, this feels like last week for the Patriots was 16-10. I can see that again this week.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those games where the Patriots, nobody's coming out of this game being like, oh, the Patriots offense was horrible. But if they had lost, if the defense just gave up a couple more touchdowns, you'd be like, yeah, the offense is in trouble too.
Right.
But where they did a nice job was kind of old school, what Belichick would want to do, run the ball, control the clock. I think they had it 35 minutes, 6 offensive linemen on 18 different snaps. That was triple what anyone else in the league did. So they did it differently. And so good for them, changing it up, running the ball. Ramondre Stevenson, 118 yards after contact out of his 120. It's my favorite stat of the week.
10 broken tackles.
10 broken tackles. The Patriots also tackled well. They only had 3 missed tackles, lowest in the league. So it was this just fundamentally sound, run the ball, control the clock, play defense game by New England. What that was able to do is hide some of their pass protection issues, because they still have them. Hide some of their run blocking issues, to be honest, because they just offset it by big personnel and Ramondre Stevenson running through people. And hide the fact that, you don't want Jacoby Brissett dropping back with 6, 7, 8, 9 yards to go and making plays on third down. I think Seattle will be better defensively than Cincinnati. I mean, and Cincinnati was fine, I think, defensively other than tackling. But Seattle's going to give them some problems. If they can't control the ball up front, running the ball, they'll give them some problems on third down with Mike McDonald's defense and those athletic corners.
Yeah, I mean, Seattle's defense I thought was very impressive. Again, it felt like that was the type of defense that would cause young quarterback problems. The Patriots don't have a young quarterback. They've got Brissett out there, but he is that marginal starter / high-end backup, and that, again, is not the type of guy that's going to excel against a really good defense that's able to cause that kind of problems, particularly when he's got a bad offensive line in front of him.
The other, sorry. Anything else?
So I expect that Seattle defense to have a lot of success, and if the Patriots clear 20 points this week, it will be an achievement.
So Ken Walker was really good in week 1 for Seattle. Their running attack, it was impressive to me. I rewatched a bunch of it. They had a couple bad blocks in there. There was a couple no chance plays, as you might want to call it, for the running back. But anytime, like the guards and center, Connor Williams, they did a nice job creating just enough room, and Walker was cutting back, making a lot of plays. He made a lot of people miss as well. So he's got an abdominal injury. Expectations he's going to play, abdominal, oblique. Didn't participate in practice yesterday. Not sure if he's going to go. The running attack looks different with Ken Walker versus Zach Charbonnet. Charbonnet not getting downhill enough, probably not running the way he needs to be. Walker has that slipperiness, gets to second level, doesn't let guys hit him straight on like you always like to talk about with running backs. It's a different offense, I think, with Walker at running back. And then I think they probably have to rely on their passing attack a little bit more. I think New England's defensive front's more stout than what Denver had last week. So Geno Smith, to DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith, and Jigba, I think they're going to lean on those guys a little bit more this week.
Do you remember that draft class when everybody hated the running back group in that draft class?
Ken Walker, Breece Hall, top 2 off the board.
Not just that, but that running back class had Ken Walker, Breece Hall, James Cook, Rashad
White,
Kyron Williams. That's actually a pretty good running back class. And the entire narrative on that class coming in was this is a bad running back class. None of these guys are worth first rounders. Wait till next year or whatever. I mean, we like Breece Hall and Ken Walker quite a lot at the time. Their athleticism showed up as well in testing. It was such a weird group that got dumped on by everybody for no reason.
Some former coworkers did not like Breece Hall.
Correct.
Yeah. Do not send those viral clips. I do not want that clip sent to me ever again.
Brian Robinson Jr. was also in that group.
It was a decent group.
Pretty good class.
It was. So yeah, I'm talking more about running backs than ever these days because it's more part of the NFL than it was just a few years ago. They have a little bit more impact, I would say, than they have. Okay. The way the NFL is trending. Geno Smith had that big run the other day, but I thought he threw the ball pretty well. Interception where he got popped. I thought Seattle's pass blocking was it started out slow, but it got better, I think, as the game went on. Something to keep an eye on against this New England pass rush. Keon White was a monster on Sunday, moving all around.
Great game.
And then I wanted to highlight Seattle left tackle Charles Cross. Best game he's played as a pro on Sunday. Remember, he was a pass-protecting left tackle coming out of Mississippi State, coming out of that air raid. And now, impressed by week 1. It's one of those, how many weeks will it take for you to get me off my priors here? Yeah.
I mean, their defense might actually be – the defense might legitimately have just picked up where it left off, which would be huge, but the offense I still feel like is going to struggle.
All right, let's go Pittsburgh Steelers at the Denver Broncos. The Steelers are favored by 2.5 here on the road at Denver. Cool over-under of 36.5.
Yikes.
For this one. For those who don't understand the implications of that number, we're looking for a low-scoring game here, Sam.
Yeah, which kind of makes sense.
That's
right?
low. Your thoughts here? 4:25 on Sunday.
And we're getting Justin Fields start again.
Yeah.
So you got Fields starting.
No Russ revenge other than his
presence on the sideline.
Looming play
presence.
Calling, the eye black.
And presumably in full pads, having run a warm-up himself before the game.
He's probably in full pads on the plane.
That's what the people that were pointing that out last week would have you believe, as opposed to he's the emergency quarterback, so of course he's in pads. So you got Justin Fields. I'm kind of excited to see what Fields brings to the table any game. You have that comical baseball pitching chart from last week, his passing map that showed that he simply did not target anywhere in the middle of the field. Everything was outside the numbers on either side. Does that continue? B, if it does, that feels like quite an easy thing to help a defense adjust to what you're running. Middle of the field can be entirely open at all times. We don't even need to put people there. It's almost like playing the prevent defense where you're just trying to take away the sideline, like funnel everything into the middle of the field because they're not targeting there. So you got that side, and then the other side.
What would my defensive coverages look like?
You would just have like four. You'd have like a guy lined up every 5 yards outside.
Every
the
5 yards outside the numbers, and just say, "Here, go."
Yeah.
It would look like the Deshaun Watson 4th down play where Amari Cooper was.
That's what I'm saying.
Wide open over the middle of the field.
But that's like
he still didn't see it.
People run that type of. It's not quite prevent defense, but that's sort of take away the sideline defense on those prevent plays where you actually want them to catch the ball somewhere over the middle and then make a tackle because that's going to kill the clock. That's what the defense that would cover Justin Fields' passing map from week 1 would look like. Does he continue doing that? Because if so, that's going to necessitate some defensive adjustments from Denver. And then from their perspective, does Bo Nix struggle against Pittsburgh's pass rush, Pittsburgh's aggressive coverages? Can he have a decent game, or is he going to be in trouble again?
Yeah, I mean, Bo Nix is a little spastic in the pocket, right? That's how you would, what? Gets a little rattled in the pocket.
Uh-huh.
Have you told me not to say that before? Is there a reason?
I'm not 100% sure that's a kosher word these days, but
really,
let it rip.
Then I remove it.
You retract it.
Remove it. Jittery in
Jittery's
the pocket.
Fine. Yeah.
A little jittery in the pocket.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I mean, it was a chore getting the ball down the field. Did you think his arm strength was part of? Like, the ball just didn't look like it's coming out of his hands great. Bo Nix.
No.
I didn't think his arm strength was bad coming out. It just didn't look NFL ready last week.
No, I don't think his arm's got anything to do with it.
You don't think so at all?
No.
It was just the decisions?
Yeah.
See if he's any better with this one. It'll be interesting to see how the Broncos kind of scheme it up for Bo Nix. They have to try to manufacture some of those throws down the field. And again, I thought Arthur Smith did a great job with Justin Fields attacking outside the numbers. And if they, sprinkle in a little bit in the middle of the field, maybe they have something here. But another Justin Fields data point here.
Just a pass every now and again,
Every now and again. I thought Pittsburgh's, like I said, I thought Najee Harris ran pretty well. I think they have a chance to lean into Harris and Fields and protect that offensive line a bit, which they did. I don't know, man. This also feels like one of those games where once you start believing in the Steelers, they kind of lay an egg too.
Yeah.
Is that where they're at? They're also one of those teams now. This will be their second straight road game. And if they could sneak another win in here, they're 2-0, and they have 8 or 9 home games. Again, I don't know off the top of my head everybody's schedule, but they have 8 or 9 home games left. So this is a huge one for Pittsburgh.
I mean, they could become a very fascinating team if Justin Fields actually starts, maintains the kind of level he was at week 1. Let's just say that. If because of that they are winning games, because that's probably enough for them to win games, and they now become this Mike Tomlin coach team that plays with intensity, that's really good on defense, and has a quarterback that's dangerous and just good enough to keep them, keep their heads above water. It makes them, and have got, a couple of good wins out of the way to begin the season, does make them a really kind of fascinating side over the course of the year in a really tough division or tough AFC.
Patrick Surtain versus George Pickens on the outside. Nice.
Yep.
That's a nice matchup to watch here.
That feels like one that is quite well suited for Surtain to have a good game. Now,
Yeah.
I say this with, Justin Fields has carved this team up before, but still.
All right, man. We'll go a little bit quicker through the rest of these games here. So, Steelers by 2.5 here on the road. Where are you going with this one?
I'm buying into that defense for Pittsburgh causing problems for Bo Nix, and therefore Pittsburgh winning.
TJ Watt versus Mike McGlinchey.
Yep.
Solid matchup here. Man, I'm doing the emotional aspect of this game. I'm going to take Denver, in part because I think Pittsburgh's been a little roller coastery, and coming off that big win where they were so impressive, they let you down sometimes. So I'll say Denver is the home underdogs here.
All right.
But man, it's Bo Nix and the Broncos.
Bo knows where to go.
No, I'm not doing it.
Pro Stars.
Can't do it with a rookie quarterback.
Can't do it, huh?
No, taking Steelers.
Got to change.
Taking the Steelers.
Gotta
The pick has changed. I got to go into the sleeper
Go to
app
the
and
app.
make sure it matches. Let me go put Pittsburgh in there too. This is the thing. You change your mind right on the fly as we're talking through this thing.
Got to change everything.
Pittsburgh, officially.
Audrey
3.5.
Guessame consigned to the IR, sent to the hole for fumbling. Maybe he's hurt as well, but it sort of feels
He's
like
hurt.
allegedly.
Rest in peace, hand model, Audrey Guessame. All right, Los Angeles Rams at the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals are favored by 1.5 here.
Let's go.
Got the whole we had a good Marvin Harrison Jr. discussion on the show yesterday. Also, just an individual video here on the YouTube channel that you've all subscribed to already. Appreciate that. Subscribe button. So we won't get into that too much here, but what are you looking for in Rams Cardinals?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Arizona offense is going to be pretty useful all year. The question now, I think, is, okay, Rams just been wrecked by injuries already. Week 2 of the NFL season, their offensive line is destroyed. They've got Puka Nacua down. They've just got injuries across the board. But Arizona is a team that's vying with Carolina for having the least pass rush in the NFL. Are they able to show up because of the opposition? Like, are they? I mean, Aiden Hutchinson was winning every single rep against a third-string offensive tackle. Arizona don't have anybody that can do that. But do you get a random barbarian game?
Oh, the barbarian.
Because he's going up against weak offensive linemen. Like, do they have anybody that's got just enough to have a decent game when they're going up against backup offensive linemen?
Yeah, because after week 1, it's really fun, right? So the highest pass rush grade in the league, as I mentioned, was the Lions in week 1 because it happened against the Rams because they were good and the Rams were depleted and hurting. After week 1, the Cardinals have barely the second worst pass rush grade, right there with the Panthers, as you mentioned. Something's got to give. The turnover on the Rams offensive line. This was the story of their 2022 season, and does this end up becoming the story of their 2024 season? In addition to having to replace Puka Nacua with some combination of Demarcus Robinson and Tyler Johnson and Jordan Whittington right now. So how well can the Rams overcome some of these injuries? I liked some of what their defense did until they kind of got overpowered down the stretch there against the Lions.
That certainly wasn't great.
No, it wasn't. But, something to keep an eye on this whole time. Jared Verse had some success. The rookie edge rusher still have Kobe Turner up front.
Jared Verse had a pretty good game.
Yeah,
when
he
you
did.
Consider. Yeah, I was quite impressed by him.
My concern was, I guess, the consistency in the secondary. Tre'Davious White, consistency from the Rams on the back end.
And, of course, we're now on Marvin Harrison Jr. watch. Does he still run like a hippo, or has he I don't know. I don't understand what happened in that week 1. I was curious. So somebody
run like a hippo.
Yeah, the hippos are actually pretty fast. When you look
you should check for our animal draft this offseason. We'll
look
figure out
great.
if that's a good or a bad thing.
You wouldn't describe them as graceful.
I'm a possession receiver hippo.
Right. You wouldn't describe them as graceful movers on land, but they're actually quite fast. So maybe that's the wrong animal to use describing him. Point being, his week 1 was not good for Marvin Harrison. Obviously, there was no production, but also the data suggests that he was one of the slowest moving wide receivers in the NFL as well, when college data does not say that. Again, we talked about this all the way through yesterday's show, had a little discussion on it. If that happens again, like if that's week 2 and he's still running really slowly and not, I mean, at some point you're getting worried by that.
Yeah. Listen to that discussion yesterday. I think we got into it pretty well. Matchup-wise, again, I think Jonathan Gannon has done a nice job of having the Arizona Cardinals prepared as underdogs. They're favorites right now, but as underdogs over the last couple of years. And I think the Rams' quick-hitting passing attack will have success against this Cardinals defense. I think the Cardinals' pass rush they can't even take advantage of the Rams' injuries.
So Ben has just posted in the chat here that a hippo apparently reaches a speed of 18.6 miles per hour, which I think is 2 miles an hour faster than Marvin Harrison ran. So Marvin Harrison is running slower than a hippo currently.
So a hippo is really like an athletic tight end.
That's what I'm
you
saying.
Get that tight end at 18.6, 19 miles an hour.
You don't want to screw with a hippo. That thing it certainly can chase you down. It can chase down a lot of people. You got to be pretty fast to outrun a hippo.
I hit about 13.5 on my street a couple of years ago. Didn't I send you that video?
You did.
I was running at night.
13.5.
Yeah. I think Harry hit 11.
Yeah. Well, a hippo is smoking you.
Yeah. I have to train to beat a hippo.
Definitely.
So your hippo analogy, this is good. We have our live fact checkers here.
Right.
That's producer Ben, not Ben Stockwell.
Correct.
Of PFF.
He might also chime in with some fact checks.
He might fact check us now. We're not on Slack with him anymore.
But he's busy. He's busy these days.
We have a new Ben fact checking us here. So yeah, will the hippo get open?
He also, by the way, in this thing, the average human's running speed is around 13. That was kilometers an hour. Though.
Oh, I'm an average human.
No, you're faster. You hit miles an hour. The 13 kilometers an hour apparently is the hippos, or is the average human speed.
Humans are real slow.
Well, certainly that
means most hippos probably aren't touching 18. If we're taking the average, they're probably at 15.
The average person is just apparently terrible.
They're dumb. They're slow.
13 kilometers an hour is pathetic. I'm sorry, but if you can't do better than 13 kilometers an hour, you need to get into the gym and start moving around.
At what age?
Any age. The point where I can't hit 13 kilometers an hour, it's time to just hang it up and sit in a hammock for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Hopefully not for a while.
Right.
All right, let's make picks on this game.
Yeah, that was some in-depth analysis of hippos. I hate it, but I'm going with the Arizona Cardinals.
The favorites. No, I think the Rams will still be okay. I think their biggest weakness right now is the turnover on the O-line. Arizona can't exploit that well. Still trust Stafford. He had a couple duds last week thrown into coverage, but I think he'll be okay. Him and Cooper Kupp eat. Give me the Rams. Getting 1.5. What, do you have something else?
No, I hate picking Arizona, but I feel like they match up well because their weakness, it's the pillow fight thing. Their weakness matches up with the Rams' biggest weakness, and their offense, I think, will be pretty good. So I don't like it, but I'm picking them to win and cover that.
All right, we got 4 more games, the last quarter of the slate here. But first, we're talking a lot of football. NFL Sundays, college football Saturdays. It's a great time of year. Your inner GM comes alive, setting the perfect fantasy roster, screaming at your TV, making last-minute waiver moves. But while you're over here making sure your fantasy team's dialed in, don't let your personal grooming become the guy that gets left on the bench, Sam. Let's be honest, nobody wants to fumble their grooming routine. That's where Manscaped's Performance Package 5.0 Ultra comes in, acting as your all-in-one grooming playbook, from keeping things sharp down below with the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra to taking care of those rogue nose hairs and ear hairs with the Weed Whacker 2.0. It's a lineup that will keep you looking and feeling like a champ on and off the field. Join over 10 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped and get ready for kickoff by heading over to manscaped.com. Use the code MIC20, that's MIC20, for 20% off plus free shipping. Trust me, you'll be drafting the real MVP of grooming this season. So, Performance Package 5.0 Ultra, it's your complete grooming playbook, as I mentioned. You get the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra Groin and Body Hair Trimmer, that's right. Weed Whacker 2.0, that's for the ear and nose hair. You get your ball aftercare as well. Post-shave, give your most valuable players some TLC. The Crop Soother, that's a trademark. Ball Aftershave Lotion. And the Crop Preserver Anti-Chafing Ball Deodorant. Make sure you stay fresh and comfortable throughout every quarter of your day. So it's all at Manscaped. You get some free gifts. The Performance Package 5.0 Ultra doesn't stop at grooming essentials. It also comes with 2 free gifts. The Boxers 2.0 Midnight Bravo and the Shed 2.0 Toiletry Bag. Now, you have the Shed Toiletry Bag. Did you get 2.0 yet?
No. So I don't believe they're version 2.0, but I was actually wearing the Manscaped boxers yesterday.
You were?
I was.
How did you not jump in the middle of the read yesterday and say, I'm wearing them right now?
It didn't register that you would reference boxers. I was too busy focusing on their
That's
beard.
right. I didn't mention the boxers yesterday.
Yeah, there you go. So,
but, hey.
And I've only apparently got version 1.0. I haven't, Midnight Blue, I haven't experienced.
If we could get the Manscaped people to please send us the Boxers 2.0 Midnight Bravo and the Shed 2.0 toiletry bags, just so we can test out what 2.0 looks like relative to the 1.0, that would be great.
I mean, at all times, I will fully endorse the Shed travel bag. I have like 3 of those things, and they get extensive use.
Anyway, that's a lot here. And we've already had many listeners send us screenshots, send us proof that they're back in. They're in with Manscaped, that they're in on the special deal. 20% off plus free shipping with the code MIC20 at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping. Code is MIC20 at manscaped.com. Stay on top of your grooming game and be ready for anything the season throws your way. Now, yesterday we read that leading into Jake Gruden, and that might be our bit as we, every Wednesday, Manscaped read right into our special guest. It's the best way to transition in.
Ease them in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Las Vegas Raiders at the Baltimore Ravens. Ravens favored by 8.5 here. Sunday, 1 o'clock.
Man, that's a big line for this.
Sure is.
I thought, okay, the Raiders offense, not great. I thought their defense was pretty good, though. And this was with Max Crosby. So on the one hand, both Chargers offensive tackles did a very good job against Max Crosby. On the other hand, he still had a really good game because A, he's that good, and B, he moves around. He's able to get himself.
Yeah, it's not always just one-on-one with the tackles. You run stunts, you do other stuff.
So he ended up having, 2 defensive stops, a sack, 4 total pressures, a pretty good PFF grade, despite effectively, I would say, losing one-on-one against both offensive tackles over the course of the game. But overall, that Raiders defense I think is pretty good. Baltimore, they'd probably be better this week because they're not going to be so amped up to face the Chiefs, but they didn't exactly amaze, week one. We were talking about how clunky that offense was and disconnected, and, it needs to get itself together. So I sort of feel like the Raiders defense will be all right against Baltimore's offense. And then it's just a case of how much they can get going themselves.
Yeah, the Raiders defense, interesting because you've got those big plays that J.K. Dobbins had. Once again, I'll reference the PFF grades to kind of tell a bit of a story here. They had a 74 run defense grade as a team, which you might say, well, didn't they just give up 100 whatever yards to J.K. Dobbins? They gave up all these big plays, and they did. Dobbins finished with 135 on 10 carries, but that was like one or two big plays, essentially, and pretty much one busted gap. So a team that gave up 176 yards on the ground on 27 carries, play for play, snap for snap, most of the players played pretty well, and there's a blown gap in here and there, and it looks bad overall. You can assume that's probably not going to happen again. So I would almost say a Raiders team that gave up 176 on the ground at 6.5 a pop was actually okay if they shore up one or two little things, right? J.K. Dobbins cut back that leads to a 61-yarder.
Yeah.
So I think they've got the opportunity. Christian Wilkins was really good up front.
Yeah.
When Joe Walt's PFF grade wasn't great overall, or wasn't as good as the hype is, because in the run game, every time he lost in the run game, he's trying to down block on Christian Wilkins. Wilkins was beating him left and right. So they looked pretty good up front. I think they've got a chance to do some damage against this Ravens offense.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I do think that that side of the ball is actually, I'm not going to say they have the advantage, but I think they can have a pretty good game, and then it becomes, can they score at all?
And now as I'm talking through it, so I wanted to go Vegas. I'm thinking like Gardner Minshew. I definitely took the Ravens against the Colts last year. Week 3, I believe it was. Definitely did. In Baltimore. And Gardner Minshew's Colts took it to overtime against the Ravens. They won, right? I think they won.
I don't remember.
Either way, at least went to overtime. And now I'm thinking Gardner Minshew and the Raiders, even though their offense did not look great last week, it was one of the least effective run games in the NFL, and outside of a little swing pass to Alexander Mattison for a touchdown, they didn't do much offensively. But I keep thinking about Minshew taking the Colts, competing with the Ravens in Baltimore early in the season. And I'm wondering about the mental state of the Ravens.
Yeah.
I'm going to be keeping an eye on that, Sam. Did they put so much into week 1 that they can't bounce back? Or are they still the old Ravens who in these games usually take care of business? They usually take care of business and crush teams when they're supposed to.
And as much as it wasn't great for Gardner Minshew in week 1, he did have the 8th most passing yards in a bad week 1 for production from quarterbacks.
Was that 170?
No, 257. He had more passing yards than C.J. Stroud, Josh Allen, Brock Purdy, Jared Goff, Darnold, blah, blah, blah. They moved the ball a reasonable amount. Look, I think you're right. We made quite a lot of the Baltimore Ravens' mental state against Kansas City. So it does stand to reason to monitor what the lingering after effect of that is. Do they, now that they're not so ramped up to face the Chiefs, do they bounce back in a major way and look like a really elite team? Or have they been psychologically damaged a bit by putting so much into that game and still coming up a toe short of being able to have a chance to win it? That's, I think, an interesting thing to watch for Baltimore, where they are mentally.
Last year, officially, it was Colts 22, Ravens 19 in overtime. That was the Ravens lost, 3 games last year? 2 games? That was one of them. Minshew's Colts in Baltimore. Just sticking in the back of my mind. All that said, I've just changed my pick to Baltimore. God, sticking with if they're a touchdown favorite or more, I'm taking them this week.
8.5. I can't. I'm going with the Raiders. I'm going to see, what is it in the? It's 9.5 in the sleeper league, so it's even more. But either way, I'm going with the Raiders.
So this is messed up. We got different lines.
Well,
do we have to keep the sleep? Does the sleeper league have to match what we say on the show?
I think it probably should, but the
lines are going to move a lot because we could change sleeper all the way up to game time.
But the sleeper league locks the line on Tuesday, I believe.
Oh, it does.
So whereas
okay.
our line will move up until the show, the sleeper league on Tuesdays, I believe, is when it locks
I
the
see.
line,
Okay.
and that's what you're dealing with for the week.
I mean, there's going to be times I'm going to want to hedge and have something different in the app. Am I really taking Baltimore? I had Vegas in it. I just changed it. I'll take Baltimore. I'm just going to regret all this stuff on Sunday. It also doesn't matter. Can't wait to hear what Harry picks here. I apologize for not having Harry's picks for everybody. Maybe I'll do like a one-off. Maybe I'll do a Friday video with Harry where he just unveils his
But
picks.
they can find them once they get into
we can do whatever we want on the YouTube channel.
Once they get into the sleeper app, they can see his picks.
They can see his picks.
You just need to put them in.
Yeah, once they're in the app. I'll get them before game time tonight. We'll get them. New York Giants at the Washington Commanders. By the way, you took Vegas. I took the Ravens.
Correct.
Giants at the Commanders, Sunday at 1 o'clock. Commanders favored by 1.5 here. Over-unders 42.5.
Yeah, so this one is interesting because, whereas a lot of games this week, it's like, well, one team was either terrible or great against, a questionable opposition. Now we get to see them bounce back or get to see a completely different test. Both these teams are pretty bad week one, but they're going up against a pretty bad each other this week. So what does that look like? Like Washington's defense looks like it might be historically inept again, given what they gave up against Tampa Bay. Meanwhile, neither side of the ball worked well for the Giants against Minnesota. The Vikings offense was able to do basically anything it wanted outside of Dexter Lawrence. And then Daniel Jones was so bad against the Vikings defense that the Vikings linebackers apparently felt sorry for him. So, how does that play out? Like, do the Giants bounce back against Washington, or are they that terrible? Similarly, is Washington's defense so bad that even Daniel Jones can look good against them?
Remember a couple of years ago, early in the season, I felt like the NFL scheduled a lot of the bad versus bad teams. And so some of the teams that were expected to be not good were 2-0, 3-0, 3-1. And it was like, oh, are they good? Like, no. Because it was good, a lot of good versus good and bad versus bad. We're not getting as much of that. But this is one of those, right? Something's got to give here.
Well, this is one of those ones where it's so bad that it's kind of entertaining. Like, I'm very intrigued by how these two bad teams fare against each other.
I'm intrigued by all of it because, look, the Giants, we came in, what were the stories this offseason with the Giants? Offensive line, can they get Daniel Jones back to a little bit close to 2022 when they had a reasonable offense? The line pass protected a little bit better besides a couple guys up front. Still couldn't run the ball effectively at all in the same week where Saquon Barkley had 3 touchdowns. So, of course, that's probably not feeling great. Jones throws a pick 6, whether it's his fault or not. The passing offense wasn't great. This is an opportunity, though, to get Malik Neighbors involved against this Washington secondary. Washington's pass rush, they just don't have enough. They just don't have enough on the edge after trading all their guys the last couple of years. So I think the Giants offense has a chance to have way more success this week against Washington. And then the Commanders, I think it's going to be an entertaining game because they started to move the ball a little bit unconventionally with Jaden Daniels, a lot of scrambles, a lot of 16 carries. But they've got a chance to move the ball here against the Giants defense that had that soft zone and just no pass rush besides Dexter Lawrence.
Yeah. No, they do. In week one, we now have a little rolling update of how much has Cliff Kingsbury's offense changed, developed, evolved since the last time we saw him?
What you got?
Well, one of the defining characteristics, one of the things he never gave up in Arizona was this idea of my receivers line up in one spot every single play and they don't move, right? And it's a sort of classic old air raid bit that was one thing he never sacrificed. Week one, they lined up. Terry McLaurin was on left wide receiver. I think it was 87% of the time, something like that. No other receiver was over like 60%. He was by far and away, this is the most static receiver lineup that you're going to find in the NFL. It's just very interesting to me that that's something he sees as a non-negotiable within this offense, having been so malleable with a bunch of other things.
Peyton Manning used to do that with his offense.
Yeah, but the game's changed since 1999.
Changed, but Peyton's thing was he always had an answer. He also had full control at the line of scrimmage, right? So he knew if it's single high, and I know that it's going to be single high, I have a single high beater. If it's too high, I have a too high beater. If I need to check to a run, I check to a run. So the position of the players didn't matter because he had a schematic answer to whatever the defense brought to the table.
He also had Marvin Harrison over here and Reggie Wayne over here and Dallas Clark over
There are
here.
always mismatches, right? There's always mismatches.
It's one thing saying I need to move this guy around because I have one really good receiver and everybody else is just here to make up the numbers. You can probably leave them where they are when it's Hall of Famer over here, Hall of Famer over here, and most athletic tight end in the NFL at the time, receiving-wise, over here. We don't need to move those guys around. They're fine where they are.
You're saying Peyton was carried by his supporting cast here.
No, I'm just saying that when you have those guys, you probably don't need to move them around to exploit matchups. Meanwhile, when your receiving core is Terry McLaurin as number one, and then, Zacchaeus, De'Ami Brown, Luke McCaffrey, Jamison Crowder, that's a guy you might want to get on the move to try and get a favorable matchup every now and again.
So Jaden Daniels, after week 1, finishes with a 36 passing grade in that system you just described, and a 74.6 rushing grade per PFF, 17 completions, and 16 carries. Again, when we're talking about the trend around the NFL, that's a lot of running.
Yeah.
Way more running than passing. They got to figure out that balance. Again, I thought he looked comfortable in the pocket, going through reads, moving the ball around in preseason. Need some of that to carry over this week. And I'm watching this Giants 4-man rush, right? The Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau's of the world. Can they help Dexter Lawrence? Because if they get going, this Giants defense looks a lot better. And then Daniels, can he attack the intermediate level of the field here? Which is, by the way, because that's what's open against the Giants, which is the part of the field Cliff Kingsbury's offense is the worst at attacking. The 10 to 19 yard range. So It'll be interesting. This whole game is something's got to give. Yeah. The whole game.
In the bad way.
It's all weakness against weakness.
Right.
All of it is weakness against weakness. This team can't rush the passer. This team can't pass protect, whatever. It's all weakness against weakness in this game.
Every aspect of this game is movable object against resistible force, and which one of those things is going to give first.
All that said, Washington by 1.5. Where are you going with this?
Where am I going with this? I'm going with Washington.
Yeah, I want to go Washington now, too.
Okay.
I initially took the Giants.
You're just changing, flip-flopping constantly.
No, I'll stick with the Giants. I'll stick with the Giants.
No courage of your own
convictions. I think that pass rush will get home.
All right.
I think the front four will come good this week. New York Jets at the Tennessee Titans. The Jets favored by 4 in Tennessee here. Over-under is 41.5. Is this the first win for Aaron Rodgers as a Jet?
Could be. This is one of those games, I do this every year, where my kind of takeaway from watching a game was very different to the result. I was quite impressed by a lot of what Tennessee did in that week 1, and then obviously they undid all of it by conceding a block punt and then Will Levis being insane at the end of the game and throwing it away, literally throwing it away. So I kind of feel more impressed by them than going into that game. And even the things that didn't necessarily go well, you watch their offensive line, which has been the worst group in the NFL for 2 straight years, it was much better. And even the plays where they're getting beat, the first half I thought was pretty good. And you sort of look at the stats at the end of it, you're like, wow, it really didn't function that well. They didn't get much out of it. They didn't have much passing success, blah, blah, blah. But I sort of feel like the pieces are there for that team to actually be quite good this year. Again, the first half in particular, their defense, the corners were all over those Chicago receivers, who we think are pretty good. Their defensive linemen were causing all kinds of problems for an offensive line that, was made to look worse because Caleb Williams was doing what he does, but was also just getting beat up front by those guys. I quietly think that Tennessee is going to be quite good. And then, the Jets, I don't think were as bad as they showed against the 49ers, but it did seem to expose some problems. Are they going to be able to stop the run as well as they need to, or was that just a 49er specific thing? Is that offense going to be as potent as we expected it to be, or are they limited by the fact that it's Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, then you have to go to Alan Lazard to get production? I think the Jets will be good, but I do feel like Tennessee can make a real game of this.
I think this is a really fun matchup. By the way, this is also one of the worst things that the NFL does. This is one of those times. There's 10 1 o'clock games and 3 in the 4 o'clock window.
Well, I never get that. Why not Give a bit more.
as a podcaster, Sam, who needs to know about every single game. Nothing more annoying than 10 in the 1 o'clock window, because I got to go 4 box, and then you got to go double computer monitor for the other 2 games. You know what I mean? Maybe iPad. I mean, it's obnoxious trying to keep track of that. And then you just got the 3 games in the 4 o'clock window.
It does feel
The only good part is you get to the film quick. The all 22. You get to the film a little bit quicker later in the day.
It does feel like we could even that up a bit.
We could even that up, but I'm looking forward to this. And so it's in the 1 o'clock window, but like storyline wise, I'm just picturing like if the Jets fall to 0-2. There's a lot on the line here. If the Jets fall to 0-2, because you and I sat here like, yeah, you're facing a juggernaut in the Niners. You're facing the Niners on Monday Night Football in San Francisco. But now if the Jets fall to 0-2,
crisis
against Will Levis's Titans, there's a lot on the line here. But you've got this history of Aaron Rodgers, week 1 teams losing and starting slow. Even though I thought he looked okay the other night, he looked fine. I think they'll bounce back and be all right. But I'm with you. I was impressed with Tennessee and their defense. If they just don't make 2 of the biggest EPA swing plays in the NFL last week,
right?
Now it's their fault.
Yeah,
but those are plays that don't show up every week.
And particularly the Levis thing. I mean, that's not only is it his fault, but that's actually a repeatable one. Like it's unlikely to be quite as catastrophic as it was when he just pitches the ball while falling over to the corner for a touchdown.
Yeah.
But Will Levis has shown already in his NFL career that he's eminently capable of repeating that mistake.
Levis is the type of guy where everybody's like, oh, you got to avoid sauce, and you're watching Monday Night Football with Peyton and Eli, and they have Belichick on, and he's like, just like, no offense to DJ Reed, but we're going to throw to DJ Reed. We're going to throw it his way,
right,
not Sauce Gardner's way. Levis is just going to be like, who? What? I don't care. Let's go.
Yeah.
He's going to attack Sauce Gardner like 10 times this week just because.
Yeah. Like the punt block thing is unlikely to repeat. The Will Levis throwing an insane, ridiculous interception could easily repeat.
So here's my concern here. I thought the Titans did a nice job schematically getting Tony Pollard, Tajay Spears in space and everything. The Jets had 18 missed tackles on Monday night, most in the league. That's advantage Titans here, the way they played and the way they got some of their space players involved the other day before Levis threw the game away. Garrett Wilson versus L'Jarius Sneed. An awesome matchup in this. Again, the Titans are going to be pretty aggressive in the secondary, and I don't know if the Jets have enough guys getting open besides Garrett Wilson. Or if Alan Lazard had a big game, but he's not, like, he's winning on slants and then, free plays up the seam.
Right.
He's not going to win a whole lot of one-on-ones, so keeping an eye on that.
Interested to see second game from Tavondre Sweat. Really impressed by him. Mammoth 366-pound nose tackle / not even nose tackle, defensive tackle. For the Titans. Really impressed by him week 1. He played a lot of snaps as well week 1. Can he back it up with another game like that?
All right. Jets have to win by 4 here on the road in Tennessee. Can they do it?
I'm going to say no. I'm going to say Tennessee covers that.
Oh, man, I'm also taking Tennessee. I don't know. Mike Greenberg, is that considered a shouty show?
I think Greenberg specifically is. Like, he has progressed for some reason in recent times into being the guy that gives the shouty opinion, like, as opposed to I'm the host and you guys are here to give your opinion. It's like, no, I'm going to just roundabout things now.
Because I generally detest bringing fandom into this national analysis.
Yeah, you don't like that.
I hate that. Because most people are not relating to, like, Mike Greenberg, Jets fan.
Yeah.
Most people aren't relating. Like, nobody's like, oh, man, I really feel bad for Greenberg. The Jets are 0-2. They're like, I don't care. That's not for 31 other fan bases, that's not their team. But maybe it's because of what I'm about to say. There's, like, a little bit of entertainment value in watching the meltdown if the Jets start 0-2.
That's 100% what it is.
So I'm not saying I'm rooting for that. I'm not rooting for anything. Just saying if this is a big game for the Jets. Fireman Ed has a lot on the line here.
Did you see how they trolled him on his own show?
No.
They had I think what used to be an Aaron Rodgers jersey, or I assume a Jets jersey of some description, just as part of the decor, or your Palazzolo jersey or whatever.
Yeah.
And they had replaced it with a Brock Purdy jersey and hadn't told him. So he was like, and it only showed up. It's like way in the background somewhere, but it shows up as the sort of background framing shot when they focus in on Damian Woody. So Woody was giving his piece to camera, and Greenberg is like, wait, what? And then had to make them like show him it again, go on a rant about how they'd screwed him and put this Brock Purdy jersey in his studio. It's pretty funny.
That's great. You should keep doing that.
Yeah.
It's going to be a Will Levis
Hide
jersey.
Brock Purdy jerseys everywhere around the studio at all
Will
times.
Levis jersey, whoever they're playing.
Yeah.
All right. We're both taking Tennessee to cover the 4 there as underdogs. Last game of the week, I believe. Let's double check, make sure we didn't forget anything. We got the Titans, so I think we're good. Los Angeles Chargers at the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah.
Chargers favored by 5.5 here. Over under for this one's 38.5.
Yeah. I mean, look, Carolina were awful week 1. I mean, they were the worst team in the NFL week 1. I think by a fair distance, actually. Everything was bad. Their best player on defense is now hurt. Okay, New Orleans looked very good, but the general opinion appears to be that was a product of Carolina as opposed to a product of New Orleans being really good. So now, how do they look against the Chargers? I mean, that's really what we're dealing with here. They're at home, so that's nice, but everything else is like panic alarms already for Carolina.
Carolina last week, for everything that was bad, the other part was the run game, Miles Sanders, Chuba Hubbard, like they didn't get anything going there. And they're at this point where they need something offensively. And now you have a Chargers run defense, lowest EPA per play allowed in the league against the run last week. Highlighted that on Monday. This was like it's a whole new Chargers, right? Opposite of what they had been for years. Soft up front, easy to run on. They had little spurts last year where they were better against the run, but they would, give up 350 yards through the air. But if this Chargers team is, playing stout up front, very Harbaugh characteristic, all of a sudden the Panthers are immediately one-dimensional with Bryce Young trying to win through the air. That's a tough formula. And I could see that happening on Sunday.
Yeah, and they're not going to get Jonathan Brooks back yet. I think that's a potential upgrade at some point in the backfield for them, but he's coming back off that ACL. He might not be 100% right out of the gate anyway. They need – it's hard to say they need an upgrade like that. They just need to be better everywhere.
They need to be better everywhere.
They're in real – everything looked terrible.
Look, we're 1 week into the season, and if last year didn't happen, you would just say, it's 1 week.
Yeah.
Give Dave Canales another shot.
The problem is it looked the same as last year. They upgraded everything, and it all looked the same.
The one thing I'll try to say about Canales, let's say last year the Bucs started 2-7, right? I think they went 2-0, weren't great offensively, and then lost 7 straight, was it? I mean, there was 2-7 at one point, right? And then they turned it around. And so Canales, there was flashes of hope for Baker Mayfield early in the year, but it really took half the season for it all to come together for Tampa Bay. So maybe there's elements of that. I'm trying to skew positive, if possible, here.
Yeah, it's not easy.
It's not easy.
Not easy at all.
We asked Jay yesterday, anything good about Bryce Young? He said no.
I do kind of wonder.
Or anything hopeful? No.
So Jay kind of hinted at this in yesterday's show. Like, I've sort of said, look, the only thing in Bryce Young's favor is that there's really no point to going with anybody else because, Andy Dalton's not the future, right? So you might as well play Bryce Young, definitively write him off, or give him the chance to pull himself out of this and become the guy down the stretch over the course of the season. But this regime is not necessarily tied to him. It's a new head coach, for one. Is there a chance we get Andy Dalton at some point? Because it's almost certainly a fairly significant upgrade based off current evidence.
I mean, it would have to be...
Like, how bad do they let it get before they're like, there's just no point in persisting?
It would be like week 10 or 11 or something.
Okay.
It would be at this point. But here's the opposite of that is, like, I am serious. After 1 week, are you in the building in Carolina, Dan Morgan, general manager, Dr. Eric Eager, whoever, 1 week of evidence with Bryce Young and being like, we got to make sure we're scouting the draft class for quarterbacks.
I mean,
again, not that you're always scouting, like you're going to have reports on every quarterback.
Yeah.
But I'm saying like really doing your due diligence right now on next year's quarterback class now, more so than ever, right? Because GMs travel to games and they do all this stuff. Like, we got to make sure we get to the Texas-Georgia game. Like, we got to make sure we see Quinn Ewers more than you expected just 2 weeks ago.
There may be a few extra flights popping up on Dan Morgan's calendar.
I'm just saying it's like that extreme of a happening on Sunday.
Yeah.
Do they counteract that now? They get home and play a little bit better here. Do they show signs of life? But they are at that point. They have a first-round pick. And then it's like, well, if we put in Andy Dalton or something and it's better, do we lose the opportunity to have the first selection at some point as well? They also lose their best player, Derek Brown, for the season at defensive tackle. They struggled against the run last week. Shai Tuttle's supposed to be a run-stopping nose tackle. He's getting moved off the ball, provides nothing as a pass rusher. Derek Brown's hurt. There's just a lot.
Not just nothing. I told you. I sent you that stat, right, where he has – I'm not 100% sure what this actually measures, but Next Gen Stats has this get-off rate thing, which is theoretically, I guess, supposed to provide some kind of time between a receiver or a pass rusher leaving the ball off the snap and then getting X far into the backfield, right? Shai Tuttle's average get-off rate was, 1.56 seconds, something like that, which just like glacially slow. I mean, forget hippo. That's like giant sloth.
I don't know what the distance is for that, but that's a 10-yard dash time.
Yes. So if he's not getting 10 yards into the backfield,
that's like a good, like I ran a 1.83 10-yard dash.
Yeah. Most receivers are moving faster than that over 10 yards. And that
he had
I think it's only measuring it.
PFF had him with 2 pressures last year.
Yeah.
Anyway, from a Charger standpoint, I just want they ran the ball well enough last week. It was a lot of like slow burn, and then J.K. Dobbins broke off those big runs I was talking about during the Raiders game. Do they expect more from Justin Herbert? Are they still able to get by with another J.J. McCarthy-ish type of game? Go 16 for 24 for $180 or something for Herbert, or do they put more on him? Interested to see that, but I think the Chargers run the ball and play defense style will work well against Carolina this week.
Yeah, I think so. According to this thing that I'm reading, which is not a Next Gen, I can't find the actual explanation on Next Gen Stats live on air. This thing suggests it's time to cross the line of scrimmage, which would be hilarious.
That doesn't make sense.
Well,
it's not way. There's no way.
Not break the plane, but actually get past the line of scrimmage. That would be pretty funny if that's what it is.
I feel like a lot of the Next Gen Stats, they just need a lot of explanation.
Yeah, sure. But I think that's kind of funny.
Is there any chance that, we talked 7 days ago and had a whole different perspective on Carolina? O-line's going to be better. Deontay Johnson's there.
That's what's amazing is that...
Is there any chance that it was a bad week in the Dome against the Saints, who look like 4 times a year, maybe less, maybe 2 times a year, the Saints look like Super Bowl caliber teams, a Super Bowl caliber team in the Dome. Is there a chance that was just one of them?
It's possible, but it is amazing that immediately, one game, all the optimism just evaporated instantly for Carolina.
I brought Derek Carr had a game with the Raiders against the Saints in the Dome a couple years ago where they did not cross the 50-yard line.
Yeah.
Year 8 of Derek Carr, So was that just Bryce Young ran into the 2 times a year Saints in the Dome buzzsaw? Could be.
Possible.
I'm not ready. But it also looked just like last year, actually worse.
That's the problem, is that it relates to last year. If it was just in a vacuum, we know that this team can be pretty good, but they ran into the Saints buzzsaw that happens every now and again. Sure, you can write it off. But it's because it also matches exactly what they look like all last season with the same quarterback.
All right, man. Let's make some picks. Chargers by 5.5 in Carolina.
Based off that Panthers team, I'm taking anything that plays them. So Chargers covering.
Is this your survivor pick this week?
It is. I was debating where to go with my survivor pick, and in the end, I didn't love any other game. I'm like, you know what? Let's just go with the team that's playing Carolina. I'm going to burn it now, but I didn't love anything else. So yeah.
You could take every team that plays Carolina every week.
Yeah, assuming you haven't taken them already with something else.
Yeah, except division teams. So you could always pick against Carolina.
Yep.
I'll take the Chargers also to cover the 5.5 here. Run first, defense, covering 5.5. We'll still do it. We'll do it. All right. That's it. Under 2.5 hours. Mm-hmm. Have we set a new standard for preview shows at 2.5? And review shows at 3.
Apparently. Seems to be where we've got to anyway.
That puts us at almost 8 hours of full content a week in just the podcast.
Correct.
Plus
Live
the other stuff on YouTube. We didn't get to 10,000 yet.
No.
On
People
YouTube.
have been slacking with the clicking of the subscribe button.
We're at 9.97.
Close. 30 people away.
Is it 30? All right. Click the subscribe button. Let's go. In YouTube on the way out. We appreciate everybody. Tonight on YouTube, we're going to have instant reaction to Bills Dolphins. So here's the deal. If you are on YouTube exclusive, we react to our primetime games. So you only get that on YouTube. You have to hit the subscribe button. If you're in podcast land, hit that subscribe button as well and join us all the time. And the 5-star reviews, those help. Do all the things.
Do all the
5-star reviews. Tell your friends, spread the word. All right. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll see you again tonight on YouTube only, but more importantly, Monday morning for your Week 2 NFL review.
It does.